You're on, Mrs. Woolman? Ready. Okay. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Howell Township Mayor and Council's workshop and regular agenda meeting. It is July 17th. The time is approximately 6:30. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the opening statement and call the roll?
Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this regular meeting of the Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner. By the posting of a copy of said notice upon bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on January 1, 2007, by the faxing of a copy of said notice to the Asbury Park Press, Tri-Town News, and Star Ledger for publication on January 1, 2007, by the filing of a copy of said form of notice in the Township Clerk's office on January 1, 2007. The public will be allowed to attend and will be allowed to participate pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of Public Law 1975, Chapter 127. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, be advised that this facility is designed with 3 emergency exits for your safety. The locations are as follows. Upon exiting the meeting room, to the rear there, to your immediate left and immediate right, and at the front of the meeting room, at the left of the dais. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. Roll call, Mrs. Dalton.
Here.
Mr. Howell.
Here.
Mrs. Showmaker.
She called and has a personal matter to attend to.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Mayor DeBella.
Here. All right, Mr. Chudetsky, I believe we have reason to go into executive session. Is that right, sir?
That's correct, sir.
And the reasons are?
Litigation, contract negotiations, and personnel.
All right, Ms. Woolman, would you please read the appropriate statement?
Whereas Title 10, Chapter 4, Section 13 of the New Jersey Revised Statutes require that the public shall not be excluded from any meetings of a public body unless a resolution authorizing such exclusion is adopted at a public meeting. Whereas the Township Council of the Township of Howell has determined that such a closed meeting is required to discuss certain matters which are exempted from consideration with the public in attendance under New Jersey Revised Statutes 10:4-12. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Howell that the public shall be excluded from the next portion of this meeting, and that the Township Council will reconvene in public session thereafter. Be it further resolved that minutes will be kept of the meeting in closed session, and the time and circumstance under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public cannot be determined at this time.
We need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes, for the benefit of the public, we expect to be completed with executive session within approximately 1 hour. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, please, we're going to call the meeting back to order. If the folks in the back wouldn't mind just shutting the back doors, we would certainly appreciate it. Okay, welcome again, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to reconvene the meeting to order. The council has been in executive session since approximately 6:30. We've already had our opening statement and roll call. I would ask that everyone please rise for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'd ask that everyone just please remain standing for a moment, silent observation in thought of the troops that defend this country all over the world. Thank you. I'd like to call the council's attention to the acceptance of minutes. We have minutes from the April 10, 24, May 15 and 29, and June 16 and 26, executive session, special meeting, workshop, and again, executive session. If anyone would like a separate vote on any of these dates, please just request such.
I'd like a separate vote on June 26th, Mayor.
Okay, we have a request for a separate vote on June 26th. Are there any requests for any other separate votes?
Do you have June 12th anyway?
We do have June 12th.
I'll have to abstain from
Okay, so we have an abstention for June 12th. Any other requests for any separate action on the approval of minutes? All right, hearing none, please let's have a roll call first, or a motion and a second, I should say, for the June 26th regular meeting and executive session.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments or remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please, on June 26th.
Mrs. Dalton? Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
No.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Mr. Bongiovanni, we have an abstention, a no, and 2 yeses. Okay, thank you, sir. We need a motion, please, and a second for the remaining minutes of the April 10, 24, 15, and 29 meetings.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion, we need a second, please.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. We have report of township officials. I'm going to deviate for a second. I usually let the council go first, but tonight is the last meeting of our current township manager, Mr. Thomas Chernietsky, and I'm certain the whole council will probably want to separately comment on this, even aside from reports. And this is a very sad meeting, at least I think for most people in the community, particularly those that had an opportunity to work with Mr. Chernietsky or watch him work. And while it is a misfortune for us, the community he's going to is gaining an incredible manager, a wonderful person, and a man of great integrity and talent. Mr. Chernietsky marched into the executive session meeting of the council, I guess it was maybe January of last year, for an interview for the manager's position. None of us had any idea who he was. His resume was in with a number of other resumes, and he stuck out. He stuck out very clearly as one of the top pristine candidates. And he made it as a finalist to the next round. And we put all of the candidates, quite frankly, all of the finalists through a lot. They met with us 3-4 times. And this was a person who just absolutely stuck out. There's no other way to explain it. There were a number of real good candidates, and then there was this fella. And he had all of the credentials and the resume and the history, and a young person who was full of energy and compassion, and he took us all by surprise, and he won us all over, and he was unanimously selected to become the manager. And in the time that he has been here, he has accomplished, in my judgment, just absolutely incredible things. He came with a planner's background, had been a planner, just brought an air about him in the way that he carries himself, in the way that he deals with people, in the way he responds to residents. I can't tell how many times I would call the manager's office and he'd answer the phone in the middle of the day. And it could have been anybody that was calling. He would have no idea that it was me or anybody else. And he has brought such an air of professionalism to the management of this municipality on a day-to-day basis. And all of his predecessors were wonderful people. They all did a good job. But this is someone who has really stood out. And what the council has asked him to do, or had asked him to do, in the time that he had been here was mammoth. He inherited last year's budget, dozens of projects, all kinds of issues that came up day to day, and yet I would get emails from him on his BlackBerry at 11 o'clock at night asking us to take a look at something. So we have been so wonderfully well served by this person, and I know I'll sincerely miss him, because he has a way about him that is just so special and so unique, that Howell Township is clearly a much better place because of the time that he has been here. And I think there isn't a township employee, there isn't a resident who hasn't come into contact with him, or a member of this council or the old council, that just doesn't stop back and say, this is a really good person who understands government and policy and process. And I've personally learned an incredible amount from him in the time that he has been here. And I've just really enjoyed every possible moment. And while I'm heartbroken that he's leaving, he's making a decision for his family. And I have the greatest respect that he's going to do what's best for his family, as any of us would do. And so while he's leaving to do something different, he leaves this community, in my judgment, in a significantly better place. And I just wanted to personally thank you, Tom. As the mayor, you have been truly exceptional, and I can't even tell you how much I'm going to begin to miss you. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. That was very touching. I'm kind of choked up. I don't know. I can't respond. But I really appreciate it, and some great people in this town and on this staff that I think the things that we did were because the council had a clear sense of what priorities were, and I just simply translated them, and the staff behind me implemented. So, but thank you very much, and to my staff as well.
Mr. Walsh, very generous that he is and continues to be, has provided a cake for later this evening. So when we need a break, we'll take one, and we have a cake courtesy of Mr. Walsh, and we'll privately do some celebrating with you later.
Thank you.
Here it is. All right, I have nothing else under reports, actually, in light of the lateness of the hour. Mrs. Dalton, would you like to go first?
Well, very briefly, because I am mindful of the hour, I share the sentiments of the mayor. I have been on the council now for 6 months, and it takes a lot to sit up here and to learn and understand things, even if you hold a professional degree. And Mr. Czernecki has been very helpful in helping me come up to speed, get acclimated, and I am grateful to him for what he's been able to share with me in such a short time, and very sad and disappointed that he won't be there. I also would be remiss if I didn't take the time, if we didn't take the time tonight. I believe, and it's a shame I don't see Mr. Filatrio here, but it's my understanding that tonight is his last meeting too, because his retirement is effective August 1st.
No, no, that's not the case.
That's not the case?
No, correct.
So that way there's not two cakes here? Okay.
Okay.
You'll fill us in what that means?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
But
Okay.
yeah, there's a story
Great.
behind the story.
Fill us in.
yeah, all right, then.
Okay, just very quickly, once an employee hits 60 years of age, the retirement age, it's a good idea for that individual to file retirement papers with PERS, so that in the event anything, PERS is the Public Employee Retirement System, because in the event something happens to that employee, if those papers aren't filed, the spouse isn't entitled to the pension, only the life insurance. So that option is removed. So all employees who hit 60 years file, and you probably saw the filing paperwork.
Okay.
So
But I thought that we had also, I mean, I heard the mayor tell him at least 3 or 4 times during the whole process that he was so
retire.
sad to see him go.
I'm under the impression he's retiring. Is he?
Me too.
Maybe the date hasn't been finalized?
correct.
Okay.
So as of August 1st, we'll still have a chief financial officer.
You will have a chief financial.
So what I read in the pension system is wrong.
Correct.
He is not retiring on August 1st.
Correct. You will have plenty of lead time before that decision is made.
Okay.
Okay?
Anything else under reports, Mrs. Dalton?
No.
Councilman Howell?
Mayor, one of the things that I remember was when we got elected, Angela and I, and when the deputy mayor was reelected, was that Tom reached out to us right away and told us that he was going to schedule classes so that we didn't come in here on January 1st not knowing anything. And I had spoken to people in other towns and they had never heard of that. It's those kind of forward-thinking ideas that I'm going to miss. Tom never didn't take a phone call or answer a phone call when I called him and asked him a question. He would explain to me in great detail and in painful detail when I was in line and when I was out of line. And one phrase that I will never forget is, "Stay out of that sandbox." So I will deeply miss your leadership and the way that you serve this town, and I wish you nothing but the best in your new job. That's it for me, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman.
By the way, Mr. Howell, of any of those conversations, I always trusted that you were coming with great sincerity and love for the community.
Mr. Walsh, anything under reports?
I'm glad to see Amy Palumbo from Howell, New Jersey is still Miss New Jersey.
No question.
I'm very happy about that. I too miss Mr. Chinesky. I mean, I spent a lot of time with him over the last 16 months, and he's helped educate me tremendously. Probably the finest teacher I've had since 6th grade. But his patience and his understanding, and
They'll be sorely missed. I still don't understand government. You know, I'm a little bit miffed. I did order the cake for Mr. Chinesky and Mr. Filiatro. I know that back in January, Mr. Filiatro told us he was resigning, and somebody emailed me that he's put into the pension system 3 times to retire. So his retirement date was August 1st, and the last time he put in the papers. I don't know. Being a pretty simple guy, I figure you resign and your pension papers get put in for August 1st. I thought he was retiring. I guess I was wrong. But, you know, I'm going to miss Mr. Chinesky. I think he's been very professional. I think he's done a lot of good things for Howell Township. I'm a little upset at him, as he knows, because I think it's a job undone, not finished. There was a lot of things in progress, though. His expertise, I believe we needed to move some of those things forwards. And it may take more than one person to help those things to move forwards. So it's going to take a little time to reposition my thinking, to speak to the other council members and the mayor. You know, he had an expertise in planning that most managers, I think I've seen about 30, 40 applications from managers, and none of them had his background in planning. So it was a unique education that he had that I think fit Howell Township and did a lot for us. So we will be naming an interim manager. I'm very confident in her ability. And we'll go forwards from here. Howell's a great place to live. We have a lot of great professionals, department heads, a lot of capable people in Howell Township, a lot of citizens that keep us on our toes, sometimes even my back against the wall. But I'll miss Mr. Chinesky deeply. And I'm saddened that he's leaving. I do wish the best for him. But I'm not ashamed to say it. I've told him I'm a little bitter he's going. I will miss him. And I'm a little bit angry, a little bit saddened. But I wish well to him and his family and all their endeavors. I understand what he's doing. Thank you for your service here, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
Thank you so much. All right, Mr. Chinesky, under reports, what do you have for us, sir?
Yes, Mayor, very quickly, I'm going to start with the good news first. The good news is that I spoke with the investigators from the New Jersey Department of Transportation today, and I believe we've persuaded them to reverse their decision regarding the closure of Redwood and Route 9.
That's terrific.
And we will be required to make some technical adjustments to our ordinance, but I would be remiss in not pointing out how, after we received that correspondence from the state, how Patrolman Bishop, Corporal Fiore, and Sergeant Markulik jumped on that matter as quick as you can imagine to straighten out the facts and get those facts down to Trenton. So my gratitude to them for jumping on this.
That's great news.
So those, I spoke with the investigator. He's okay with us leaving the barricades up. We don't have to take them down even while we work on the ordinance, but that'll be something we have to deal with immediately. There will also be a legislation coming down requesting the governing body to approve soil removal from the Coltnex Crossing site. And it's in keeping with our ordinance. It'll be going out of town to another municipal agency that needs it for a capital project, specifically the New York City Sanitation Department, to cap some landfills. You heard last week from the McEwens regarding issues at the Steeplechase development they have. Meeting's been set up for next week to review their file and their issues. The unused escrow accounts that were on the agenda last week are still on the agenda this evening and are recommended because they have to do with unused escrow accounts, and a meeting is set up with that family. And we covered redbud, and that's it, Mayor.
Okay, anything else from any of the other professionals that need to be reported? Mr. Bongiovanni, anything under solicitor's report?
We have
If you could just pull the,
other than what we discussed, other than what we've just discussed in executive, we have an ordinance.
is the red light on, Mr. Bongiovanni?
I think it is, yeah.
There you go. Now
We have an ordinance on tonight where an attorney is here, wants to put in an objection to one of the ordinances, and I think in light of the kind of agenda we have, if there's anybody else involved in that particular ordinance who wants to be heard, I would suggest that he be allowed to speak first.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. All right, hearing nothing else on reports, we're going to have our hearing of citizens. We've got a variety of people who have put their name on the roster. If you have not had your name added and would like to be recognized on any general matters, just please come on up and we'll add your name to the list. First person is Mr. Stanley Merciniak regarding a matter to do with the planning board, it says. Welcome, Mr. Merciniak.
Stanley Marciniak, Jerseyville.
Hello, Mr. Merciniak.
Oh, I'm okay?
I think you're good. You pull it a little closer, Mr. Merciniak.
Okay. What I'm going to do here is, let me get in. I have a maze of paperwork, so let me just take a little time. I'm going to be talking about the woods at 5 Points Road, okay? Right now, you're going for final approval, but what's happening to me is I've been denied 2 planning board meetings to speak at this town about the woods and so forth, other things, right? I've been in the town for 48 years, and I lived at this residence for 38 years across the street from this woods. I know this place like the back of my hand. So I'm being denied my rights of free speech. They wouldn't let me speak at the planning board. And that's why I'm here. What I'm trying to do is straighten these things out. And I want to let you people know what's going on in this town, okay? I'm finding out that we have drainage problems, terrific drainage problems. I'll just put it out where 5 Points Road, I told this the last time, is going to have a pipe cut across 5 Points Road, 15-inch pipe, and going to turn going down south into a drainage basin, which is state drainage going to a state stream. What's happening now is that kind of drainage in this project was supposed to go to a detention basin, not down to a stream, okay? This is what's going on with malfunctioning. This whole problem is, that problem is drainage with water. And you got it bad here, and I mean real bad. Mm-hmm. All right? Let me get to the rest of this. I have the drawings on boat engineering, the Kurtz engineering, and the other engineering, showing you how they're going down 5 Points Road. They're going to go cut across with 15-inch pipe, 45 feet long, and they're going to turn and go down to a detention, a storm drain on 5 Points as it's going down towards Colts Neck as regular water right from the street. And the rules of the DEP says you can't do this. You've got to go to a detention basin. And it's what's happening. You're not doing this the proper way. Now, we also got a vernal pond in this area. And all my little friends are running around now. The spring peepers are running around. And what spring peepers are? They're little frogs. They all come out of to the wells and the springs across the street in here. The frogs are running all over. Now they want to fill it in. They fill in a spring like this, they're a little cuckoo. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. If you have to design and build things like this, I don't believe it should happen. But I'm very disappointed that I was not notified to speak at a planning board meeting, all right? And the law says I have a right to speak. And I think the people that gave me the hard time should be reprimanded. and I'm going to do it myself if I have to. All right? That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Right.
Let me get some more paperwork here for a minute. We got the problem of taking the Manasquan drainage system and putting it into the Colts Neck drainage system. We have two aquifers, the Manasquan and the Navasink drainage. I don't see how those two can compete with each other to get drainage across the street on 5 Points and Brickyard Road. They're supposed to be isolated all by themselves by rules, okay? They're breaking every rule you can break. And I get back to the same thing again. Why was I denied the right to speak? Because the law says I have a right to speak because I have a residence within 200 feet of that property, and I had every right to speak. And I'll repeat this over and over again. I hope you guys know what I mean. And that I don't feel that I should be treated as I was a... Okay. I didn't want to say the word, but I almost did. All right? But here's one statement here. I'll read it to you. Mr. Kurtz, let me put these glasses on. I can see a little better. Mr. Kurtz then proceeded to explain the stormwater system on the site. He testified the existing runoff will be taken through pipes that are proposed to flow into a ditch located at the north end of the site. Okay, the north end of the site is this way towards Colts Neck. You know what the ditch is? You ever go down 5 Points Road and you hit that big piece of steel in the road, go clunk, 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 clunk? There's a stream. That stream is a ditch. If that's an engineer and he calls it a ditch, then I might as well call it an airplane. I mean, what the hell's the matter with this guy? That's the stream. That's North Creek. That goes to the Yellowbrook and that goes to the Navasink and to the Shrewsbury Reservoir. And here it is, right in here. This is crazy. The whole system. I mean, they got approval from the town, but you got an engineer here. Ask him if this is correctly
Mayor, it's been
done.
5 minutes.
I'm just jumping around like this.
Mr. Messiniak, I think, just in fairness to the others that wanted to speak, I think we clearly understand what your concern is.
You understand, right? All of you.
And just a couple of very brief comments. You can appreciate that the planning board is a separate autonomous body.
Yep.
And the council doesn't have any jurisdiction over their day-to-day operations, if you will. What I would suggest, the chairman of the planning board happens to be in the audience. I'm sure he's making note of this particular issue.
Well, ask him why I'm not allowed to speak the last one.
All I'm going to suggest a couple things. It would, as far as I can tell, with respect to municipal land use law, it would be outside of our jurisdiction to reach out to the planning board and try and engage in their operations. Certainly, I think I speak for the entire council when we would expect that they would comply with the provisions that require everyone to be heard in an orderly fashion in the confines of their meeting. I wasn't there. Other people here weren't necessarily at these meetings. So it would be difficult for us to sort of comment on what may or may not what actually happened. What I would suggest is that you contact the planning board attorney, Ron Cachero, and register your formal complaint as you would be entitled to, that you've been denied an opportunity to speak. And in addition, I would put that in writing, if you're so compelled, that you want your comments to be heard on the record, and perhaps you've articulated a good story for us. I'd put it in writing and submit it pursuant to this application if you have not been able to verbally communicate your concerns. Aside from that, I don't believe we can necessarily reach out to the planning board and intervene, as you well know from having been on the board. But I would encourage you to take those actions, and in the event that the solicitor can offer any additional comment about whether or not we have the authority to intervene, Mr. Bongiovanni, I mean, am I correct in my interpretation? We can't intercede and tell the planning board what to do.
No, we can't.
If you would just, I'm sorry.
No, we can't, and there's another case on tonight that involves certain zoning board hearings and the like, and
Okay.
it would be wrong to try to interfere with those ones as well.
So I think the advice that I gave you in the absence of the solicitor adding to that is probably your best course of action, and I'm certainly hopeful that this matter can be rectified to your satisfaction.
Well, I'd like to see you not vote for this tonight on this approval, because the stream is North Creek. It's going to be classified as a C1 in a little while. You know what C1 means? If you're going to have polluted water going to a C1 horrible stream, somebody better wake up.
All right, thank you, Mr.
All right?
Mr. Messianic. We appreciate your comments. Mr. Brannan, welcome, sir. Good to see you. Come on up. Mr. Brannan, it says here, just for the council's edification, you want to talk about 9B23, is that right? Okay. So for the council's benefit, Mr. Brannan wants to talk about 9B23. If you just introduce yourself, please, Mr. Brannan. Welcome. How can we help you?
Jack Brannan, 16 Woodland Drive. I see under the resolution that, I guess there's a resolution for authorization for preliminary water approval for Northwood Center LLC. If I am not mistaken, this is the proposed hotel complex, and they have official filing on file to be reviewed by the zoning board. I don't think it's actually been set on the docket yet what date for review. And planning, I know, hasn't even looked at it, it hasn't gone through zoning yet. And I'm a little concerned, I guess would be, or questioning why they're looking for preliminary approval to tag into the water system when none of the governing body has reviewed this yet. It's sort of like putting the cart before the horse.
Mr. Chudetsky, could you comment? This looks like an extension.
Unless I'm, Bill wants to correct me, preliminary approval is simply our official acceptance of the application.
Mr. Nunziato, would you clarify to
Yes.
Mr. Brannan's point, please?
As Mr. Chernetsky has said, that is primarily correct. I mean, what they're doing is just seeing if in fact there is water service available or if it's a septic application. And quite frankly, it's our experience that this is an outside agency approval, if you will. It has no jurisdiction with the planning board, so this is an approval that would be separate and distinct from that. Typically, they'll make an application for a site plan, and they'll submit it to the outside agencies just to see if, in fact, water is available, and that would be something the board would maybe consider during the application process. So it's not something that needs a prior approval from our planning or zoning board for.
Mr. Brennan, is that... Go ahead, Mr. Walsh.
Mr. Chesky, is it common for us to vote on these things before they go before the appropriate boards?
Yes, we always do that.
We always do.
Are we required to do this?
It is, I don't know if we're required to do it or not, but we typically do it.
Mr. Bongiorno, do you have a comment?
It would be hard for the approval process to really work correctly if they are in a water area like the New Jersey American Water area, and there wasn't a determination made and a recognition, which is what this resolution does, saying that yes, they're within their service area, and therefore further water approvals, if they're granted, will be through New Jersey Water American. So the planning board or the zoning board really needs to know that. And
So to understand this correctly, what we're going to potentially act on 9B23 to Mr. Brannan's concern is this is a verification that they're in the area that has water service.
Right.
This is not an approval. We're not overstepping our jurisdiction. Is that an accurate description?
Yes, under the rules and regulations of the Howell Township sewer rules and regulations, the governing body, the council, is the party that makes the approval, if you will, for the preliminary application, which is just the presence or absence of water lines.
So all we're doing tonight is saying, yes, there's water there.
That's correct.
Okay. Does that answer your concern, Mr. Brennan?
Well, I don't know, have you actually looked at the resolution itself and read through it? I understand what the engineer stated. It looks like it's, and if I read paragraph 3, it says that the applicant will not be required to seek tentative or final water approval. It almost sounds like you're granting him access to tag into the water system without a site plan being approved.
Well, it's subject to all the other rules and regulations of the township, and it's subject to all the other rules and regulations of the township, which is going to mean they can't get a building permit without getting their approvals from the planning board or the zoning board, et cetera. They can't start just digging, you know, they're not going to get a permit to do that.
Okay.
The way the Howell Township sewer rules and regulations are, as far as the water system is concerned, years ago, the Howell Township did have a municipal utilities authority. That authority was sold to the water company. Now all we have is a preliminary process. The other two processes which would be applicable for sewer. Sewer has a preliminary, tentative, and final, three-step process. The water system only has one, and it's a simple, if it's in the water service area, you get preliminary, and then it goes to New Jersey American. If it's a well area, then it goes to the county. So it's just a one-step process for water.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brennan. Mr. Bob Oxford. Mr. Oxford, are you here? Good evening, Mr. Oxford, welcome. You want to talk about a zoning issue? Sure, good to see you again. Could you just give us your name and address for the record, please?
Bob Oxford, 16 Little Leaf Lane, Howell. First, I'd like to thank someone on that side panel last week promised to deliver a bunch of statutes to us, and they did as promised. We had them the next day for the item on A2. So thank you for doing that. The lighting issue is about the new road that was put into the Pine View Estates.
Would you mind, Mr. Oxford, would you just pull the microphone
Sure.
a little closer to some folks in the
Better?
back? That's terrific, thank you, sir.
The Memorial Drive, the new road that was put in to grant access into the community, it's about a third of a mile long, and it's completely dark at night. It's a road that kids use heavily for skateboarding and bicycling, and will continue to use forever, I'm sure. It's a great road for that. And we just wanted to see if we can get some street lights put in there for their safety, and also the walkway, as people walk up to the Ramtown Shopping Center and back, as we get closer to winter, it'll be dark and it'll be unsafe.
The issue of lights has come up. Mr. Janinski, do you want to?
Mayor, there were a number of technical matters with the utility and some bonding issues that we would need to resolve to complete that phase of the project. And it's a matter we were looking to tackle once the red bud issue was resolved. But to the extent that both roads are open at this point, both accesses are open. Residents have an option of a lighted access point or one that's not. We did install chevrons, which makes the road safer. There have been absolutely no incidents at this point, and so frankly, there may need to be a discussion and further review of the need for lights on that road. And I think we would look to our police department and our traffic engineer, a year into it to evaluate that. But that would be my recommendation before we make that investment.
And for the record, there have not been any incidents, but there have been some mishaps, close calls, let's say.
Sure.
So we're trying to prevent that incident from happening.
Terrific. Okay.
Okay. And if I may, on the Rosebud issue, which I believe is
Redbud?
Redbud?
Yes, sir.
Yes. I think most of the residents of the community Pine View are against the closing of that for just safety issues of getting in and out, alternate means of access. And I understand we're trying not to use it, but I think for emergency vehicles and emergency egress, it should be kept open.
I'd be remiss, Mr. Oxford, if I wasn't candid with you, and I can't speak for anyone else, that for 3 years, this chamber was often packed with people on that very issue.
I understand.
And it was the bane of the existence for Ramtown for a very long time, and so
And
I think your comments are very well intended and certainly are worthy of the council's consideration. But I can tell you, after 3 years of public hearings, multiple meetings, presentations, I can't speak one way or the other what could happen in the future, but the people who had been there for many years, as
Right.
you can appreciate, were the ones who we were responding to with respect to them being our constituents. And while there were clearly two views on that, at the time, in consideration of all the information, it was the council's decision to proceed to close it as a matter of public safety and
Safety.
hence build the access road.
Okay.
But I'm certain that this council and our successors will continue to evaluate that and try and make the best
Just
decisions.
a comment,
for the
and we'll
community.
live with whatever decision is made on that. One other item, if I may.
Please.
The renaming of Pink Lane to Buttercup Lane?
Yes.
That's kind of a hardship on folks that just went through changing all their addresses. Is there any logical reason for this?
There's apparently another street, and we have a requirement to change it. Is that right, Mr.
Right.
Chinesky?
And fortunately, fortunately, we didn't approve that name of the street. That was approved in Wall Township. But I think from public safety comes first, and there's a name, an exact name of another town. I believe it's in Wall. And so we need to change that name for emergency management purposes. And I understand it's an inconvenience, but it absolutely needs to happen.
Yeah, we had a requirement because if, God forbid, there's an emergency situation and over the radio waves comes, respond to this street, there's two of them. So this was a requirement from a public safety perspective that one of them had to be changed.
I'm sure that's not the only name of a street that resides in more than one town.
Only because of the proximity that they're adjacent. You know,
Okay.
if there's a town here and a town in Cranford, for example, that have the same street, it would be irrelevant. But because of the fact that we're adjacent communities, because either town could respond, hence that was the issue. It explained to us previously that it needed to be changed. Is that
Yes.
an adequate explanation?
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay.
Mayor,
Okay.
if I
Go
could,
ahead.
Mr. Chinesky, I believe actually May Pink is in Brick, and that's the road that runs to the gate
That's correct.
at
from-
Pine View. So it's in Brick, then it hits the gate, which was supposed to be the original access through Brick into
Oh,
that
okay.
development.
Oh, that makes sense then.
So now that they put the gate there, if they got a call on May Pink and it was on the Howell side of the
Right.
gate,
Correct.
they wouldn't be able to get there.
Okay.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
comments, Mr. Oxford. Nice to see you. Mr. Lariah, welcome, sir. Come on up.
Okay, it's Vince Lariah, 56C, The Villages. You note I'm inquiring after the 882. This is the ordinance 0723. I just need assurance, and for the record, that this pertains just to the Pine View Estates. It'll have no impact on the villages.
Okay, the answer to that, and I'll have either Mr. Bongiovanni or Mr. Chinesky comment in the event that I don't get it correct, but the answer is absolutely yes. This is specific and unique to that particular entity. The ordinance describes the lot and blocks. It does not apply to any other residential adult community.
Great, thank you.
Is that correct, gentlemen?
Mayor, it mirrors what was on the application.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Lariah. I may pronounce the name incorrectly, so I apologize in advance. This is Nathan Suchek. Suchek, welcome, sir. My apologies. Good evening. Mr. Suchek, when you get yourself comfortable, if you would just please give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Nathan Suchin. I live at 7 Inkberry Lane at Pineview. I just want to, I was going to speak about the closing of Redbud, my opinion, but it seems Bob and yourself and the rest of the board made themselves clear. Do I understand it will not be closed as of tonight?
Mr. Chansky, would you give me a...
Sure. Sorry, Mayor.
Just go right ahead.
Council is yet to make a determination officially as to, there was a court ruling, and the council has some options to consider, and that was actually improperly listed for discussion because it was a court-related matter that needed to be reviewed in closed session.
And then it will be discussed with the...
There will be an ordinance and there will be an opportunity for a public hearing, but as of this moment, just to be clear, as the mayor said, it is the policy of the township to pursue closure of that. Okay, so there's no misunderstanding. That is the policy, to pursue closure. Okay.
We'll have to wait.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out, Mr. Suchek. Mrs. Dixell. Welcome, Mrs. Dixell. Come on up.
Good evening, everybody. Barbara Dixell,
Hello, Mrs. Dixell.
Villages, Howell Township. Okay. First, I'm going to go what's on the agenda. 9B, 28, 29, and 30.
9B.
Yes. Release of performance guarantee bonds from Manasquan River Park. I'm going to ask you to pull their bonds because they have not met their checklist. There is no 50-foot buffer along the entire length of the village's border. We've gone through this year after year after year. We were granted, Pauline Smith was the chairperson of the planning board. She's here, she can verify this. Number 8, on the final resolution with Lennar, I fought John Junko tooth and nail that night, and we won for the villages a 50-foot, 4-season farm buffer, the entire length of the village's property, that still to this day is not there. Please do not grant their bonds. Pull them and charge them to put the buffer in. We don't ask for much. We're entitled to this. It's a legal document.
Mr. Nunziata, could you help me here?
Well, first of all, it's not a bond release. It's a bond reduction, okay? They are still under bond. What we're doing here, 9B 28, 29, and 30, the approval for the project, okay, the project itself was partly in a 2-acre zone and partly in a 1-acre zone. As the project was being developed by U.S. Homes, which is now Lennar, they had sold the 2-acre portion to Toll Brothers. They sold one of the roads, a cul-de-sac, to Ryan Homes, and they subsequently developed the rest. So in essence, it's really 3 different builders in the same project. Last year, when we had asked them to consider removing some of the barns and the old house and some of the buildings, the outbuildings, as part of the negotiation, they had requested us to consider splitting that one big bond into 3 smaller bonds. So this is the outcome of that negotiation from last year. In essence, there is Section 1 or Phase 1 is, let's say, the Ryan piece. Section 2 is the Toll Brothers piece, and Section 3 is the Lennar piece. And what they're doing is they're reducing the bonds as they're permitted to under the land use law to what portions are actually completed. So that's what's really going on here.
So what's ever going to happen to us? We're never going to see this thing, right? We have a legal document that says we're entitled to it, and we still don't have it. And that was done in December of 2000.
When the applicant is requesting a release, there will be a punch list, and all the items on the punch list will be addressed. They're not asking for that.
Have they requested a release?
At this point, it's a reduction.
Okay, fine. Then just put me on record, please. You can smile. You've been smiling at me for years over this. Put me on record, because I want their bonds pulled. The villages is entitled to their legal, whatever we were granted that night.
I have a question, Mr. Chinesky, if I may, through you or to whomever. If, in fact, that this developer has not implemented a parameter of the approval, and there is not a 50-foot multi-seasonal buffer, don't we have an obligation and certainly an opportunity to send out code enforcement and begin to assess penalties in the event that they're not complying with parameters of either an ordinance or parameters of what the approval was? And I know this has come up previously, but in the event that that is the case, what actions have we taken in light of Mrs. Dixell's testimony that they are not complying with what was agreed to, and where are we relative to continuing to pursue those actions?
Mayor, they are still within the window of time in which they can't comply with their site plan approval.
Okay.
Okay, so developers ask for reductions when certain phases and sections are done. Our inspectors go out. They're confident that the basin works, that the curbs and the roads are built to our specifications and what was approved, and then we reduce for that portion of the bond. So we still have the bonds available, and they're still within the window where they can do what's required of them. So we continue to monitor it regularly.
If I may add
Go
to
right
that.
ahead.
The one section actually has 6 or 8 houses that are still under construction that have not had a CO yet at this point. So it is still considered an active project. As far as what recourse we have, if in fact the job becomes stagnant, per se, and they're not pursuing completion of their punch list, we can absolutely send them a letter or a second request perhaps, and then at that point, if there is no activity, Mr. Bongiovanni gets involved, we actually place a claim against their bond for any improvements that they're required to put in that they don't. And at that point, we have the legal process on our side to, if they don't do it, we can actually put a claim in on their bond and use that money to hire someone else to complete the improvements.
So are we in a
Thank you.
position to give Mrs. Dixell assurances
Thank you.
that when this is ultimately finished and it meets whatever the law says, they'll either have the buffer and it meets the requirements, or they'll have to, we can force them to, and have them be required to do it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Mrs. Dixell?
That, yes.
Okay.
And just so, they did have drainage problems. They did have to dig up their whole back area there, their drainage, because they had drainage problems, and I understand that. And they did dig up whatever buffer was there. There isn't a heck of a lot of it there. It's sporadic, it's weeds, it's horrible, it's disgusting. If we didn't have the border that we have between us and them, that our own trees that have been there for a billion years, we'd be in worse shape than we are. But there is no 50-foot buffer. One more thing I need to bring up.
Go right ahead.
Redbud. I am holding a copy, I've read this before, the court order from February 13th of 2002, where the plaintiff was given summary judgment because the court further determined that wholly aside from defendants' whatever Mountain Laurel obligation to facilitate the vacation of the streets was unlawful because it denied plaintiff reasonable access to public streets. I'm also holding a copy of a press release that Superior Court in Monmouth County issue a temporary restraining order on Thursday, March 1st of 2006, requiring the township to remove the concrete barriers placed at Redbud exit from the Pine View Estates development. Now, you guys are fighting that to go put these barriers back?
Let me give you the very simple explanation, Mrs. Dixell. The
Mayor,
court,
just a reminder, this is still...
yeah.
Yeah.
The reason why the original court decision was what it was there was no access road. It was one way in, one way out, predates all of us up here. That's why they said that the road could not be vacated. The conditions have changed. There now is another road. The township is pursuing, as Mr. Czerniecki pointed out, a variety of regulatory options, if you will, that would enable us to implement what was originally intended. And we think that we will be favorable in doing so and that all the right decisions have been made heretofore. For us to comment any further on responding to the judge's issue...
I understand that.
Yeah, would certainly be to disclose our legal position, if you will.
Okay,
But
I
the
understand
conditions
that.
have changed because back then there was no access road, now there is.
Okay, I understand that. And I'm also going to say something, I'm sorry on the record, that I'm sorry, it's my opinion, that I would hope that if there's anybody from the Superior Court of Monmouth County listening to this tonight, please issue a restraining order to keep those roads open. People have right to access from these roads and shouldn't close them off. And also, I was present the night when all this was going on. It was election time, it was all that was going on, when all Jacob Drive was yelling at Redbud and all that stuff, and I was there when a comment was made. We made a mistake, but we built the road anyway. This road, I'm sorry, needs to be opened, it needs to be kept open. If it needs a court order by whoever Monmouth County Superior Court, whoever's listening to this, issue a permanent restraint against the township, because in my opinion, you're in violation of a court order. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dixell. Okay. Next is, and I may pronounce this incorrectly, Greg Gianetti. Mr.
He's gonna
Gianetti,
speak.
you're here on an ordinance matter? Okay. We'll recognize you during the public hearing on the ordinance. Thank you. Ms. Janet Coakley. Good evening, Mrs. Coakley. Welcome.
I have a couple of, Janet Coakley, Lakewood Allenwood Road. I have a couple of questions first. One on behalf of a friend who wasn't able to attend tonight. She said that she went to the tax assessor's office and asked to pay her taxes ahead of time because of budgeting issues. She wanted to pay her taxes on a monthly basis, and she was refused to do that. Is there an explanation for that, why we wouldn't be willing to accept someone's money ahead of time?
Yes. The Division of Taxation's regulations govern all the local municipal assessor's offices, and you're not allowed to make partial payments. Well, they'll accept partial payments when they're due, and then they'll give you a deficiency, but they won't accept like an overpayment, for example. They'll send you back the money if you overpay. So they're just following the regulations of the Division of Taxation.
Okay, that's interesting. We don't mind if they pay less, but we don't want them to pay ahead of time. Okay, I'll pass that on.
Nobody said we don't mind if they pay less. You just,
Well, they'll
Yeah,
accept it,
that's
then
like-
they'll seek a deficiency, they'll seek a deficiency. I'm sorry.
We don't control that, so I understand. Okay, can you confirm that the legal fees for the revaluation appeals are being restricted to a maximum of $75,000 based on the not to exceed purchase order?
Well, we have not heard anything from Mr. Wolf's law firm to the contrary.
We actually,
And-
in
or have we?
fairness to Mr. Bongiovanni, he might not have received the correspondence. We have a memorandum dated today
I see.
that is suggesting that there might be a requirement or it might be a need for additional funds. And since the council has not talked about it and workshopped it, and we just received it today, I don't know that anyone has had an opportunity to digest it, but they're living within the allotted $75,000. And in the event that they need more funds, the agreement was they'd have to approach the council, make a presentation, an explanation as to why, and then the council would have to examine and make any additional considerations.
Well, I certainly hope that you'll reject that if that request comes to you, because as we, a group of us stated at the last meeting, you can't anticipate that there will be certainly a number, and probably a significant number, of appeals to the state. And I would certainly hate to see that come out of the taxpayers' pockets. We are ending up paying for this man to abuse our citizens. And I just find that, as we stated at the last meeting, absolutely objectionable. And for him, based on his own actions, to come now and say that he wants additional money in order to fight us again, that's very frustrating to me. I have spoken to 5 people who went for appeals to the county. Of those 5, and they're the only 5 I've spoken to, all 5 are appealing to the state. I think he's well aware that that's what's going to happen, and I'm not surprised he's looking for more money. But I certainly hope you will dig your heels in and let that come out of his pocket, because he's responsible for those appeals, his actions.
Mr. Bongiovanni?
In fairness, though, if you're indicating that all those appeals were unsuccessful, the logical conclusion would be then he's doing his job correctly.
No, that isn't necessarily logical. When you're talking about citizens who are presenting their own case, and they're not necessarily overly familiar with the process, and they do the best they can, and they get information that seems to imply that certain evidence will be accepted and will be adequately evaluated, and then they kind of find out that there's pieces that, while it implied they would be acceptable or not, and there's information suppressed that should certainly have been entered into the record, those things are not acceptable. When you're dealing with a commercial business where they're required to hire a lawyer, the lawyer is presenting their case, those individuals are well represented, then I would certainly agree with you. So you didn't witness what I witnessed.
Has
And-
anybody that you've been aware of, has anybody had a full hearing and without any agreement between the tax assessor and the taxpayer, and the board has rendered a favorable opinion in favor of the...
I'm not aware of
Okay.
any favorable decisions. I have certainly talked to 300 people, but I have not heard of anybody who had a favorable decision. We just felt that the way the hearings were held was unfair. I wanted to point out a couple of other things about the process, because some other questions have come up. Why did only 3, it was actually 4 of us, complain? And I had that conversation with Mr. Howell informally, and it was a fair question. So I kind of considered it afterwards, because he was right. That seems a little unusual. And when I considered why, it comes down, in my mind, to 2 different reasons. Number 1, we were the only ones who went one day before our hearing, and then went back a second day. So we observed a significant difference between the way the hearings were conducted on those days. Now, in the newspaper article, they're kind of attributing that to the county board, and I would not necessarily totally agree with that. The personalities of the commissioners hearing on those days They had one commissioner each day. The personalities were certainly different. The first individual was very involved. The second was a little more laid back and perhaps allowed far more leeway. But to blame the commissioners, I don't agree with that. Monmouth County was nothing but cooperative with us. If we talked to people there, they were polite, they were informative, they did everything they could, and I have no complaints with them whatsoever. It was the way the lawyer managed it. We also, so we saw that difference in the way the processes were managed those days. If I went only the second day, I would say, well, this is a very aggressive process. If I'd only been there the first day, I would have said, well, this is fine. Everything was very amicable. Okay, but the essence of it was that they eliminated a lot of information that should have been at least considered on behalf of the township people.
Mayor, it's been 7 minutes. Okay.
All right, I'll wrap it up as quickly as I possibly can. I haven't said half of what I wanted to say. I also want to point out that we spoke to a professional appraiser who was there, and he is actually the one who said to us, come to the council meeting. He's a man that goes to these hearings all the time, and he said, I have never seen behavior like this at one of these meetings. So he was frankly appalled, and he's a professional who observes this all the time. If anyone is interested in contacting him, we did get his business card just in case we need it for our appeal.
Mayor, if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt, because we do have many public hearings on the agenda. If I can just offer this, if there is a request for additional funds that council wants to consider, that'll be agendized. And also, in light of, I think, 8 minutes now, perhaps a motion, perhaps to extend Ms. Copeland's time would be in order.
I'll make a motion to extend it for a couple of minutes.
Okay.
All right. We have a second? Second. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, Mrs. Coakley, if you just give us the summation.
The other thing is that our negative reaction to the whole process was a part of the fact that we sent interrogatories, asked for a response. We were required to submit full responses and did so extensively. I submitted receipts for every box of nails I purchased for a renovation project. We got nothing back from them. That's extremely unfair. I think if the residents understood this process, they would all be upset. The last thing I want to say, to just make this as short as possible, and because I always like to see the humor in some things, even no matter how bad it is, the lawyer's name was what? The lawyer who represents the township?
The attorneys, it's the
Wolf. And there are two of them, correct? It's Saul Wolf and...
There's a father
okay.
and a son.
Well, there's a quote in the newspaper that says that the township threw us to the sharks, but I would amend that and say the township threw us to the wolves. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mrs. Coakley. Mr. Estevez, welcome, sir. Come on up.
Good evening, Chris Estevez, 10 Canterbury Way, Farmingdale, New Jersey. Good evening. I originally requested to speak for only one reason, but there's two things I'd like to address. First, I'd like to wish Tom, and I'm privileged to say that he said to call him Tom some time ago, best wishes and best of luck in his new endeavor. I always found Tom to be responsive to me and some of the organizations that I'm involved with in town. And I think the best compliment that I can give somebody in my mind's eye is that someone is a stand-up guy and a straight shooter. So I always found Tom to be that. That being said, being ever the pragmatist, I would hope that your professionalism will continue, and in the next few weeks and days of your stay in Howell Township, that you will put together an adequate transition plan for your successor, because there are some 50-some-odd thousand people in town that are depending on that. So, I do appreciate your service. Thank you. Now, to address the second thing, it's somewhat unpleasant, but I just heard in the audience that the firm that's representing the town in the tax appeal process has come back, and I'm not at all surprised, and asked for more money. To quote a great lady, I think that the council has to just say no. They knew what they signed up for. They're an experienced law firm. They are the preeminent law firm in this area. I commend the town for hiring the preeminent firm. I think they knew what they were up against, and I don't think they have a right to come and ask for any more money. They're running a business, they made a bid, they have a contract, and that would be like, tantamount to me asking one of my clients and telling one of my clients, oh, the fee I quoted you wasn't correct, and now we're in the middle of the process, and I'm going to raise my fee. So I think the town needs to look at this, needs to protect the taxpayer and the citizen, and the town has to just say no. I hope that that will be something that you will consider. Thank you. Tom, good luck to you and your family, and I'm sure our paths will cross again.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Estevez. Mrs. Smith, welcome. Come on up.
Pauline Smith, Vanderveer Road.
Good evening, Mrs. Smith.
Due to the busy evening and the lateness of the hour, I'm just going to make it short and sweet. But believe me, you've got something coming in the next couple of weeks.
We have no meeting in the next couple of weeks.
At the end of that. Two things quickly tonight. I wasn't going to speak about it, but since Janet brought it up, and I've had several phone calls that people who went had their hearings on different days when she wasn't present were very upset at the way they were treated. And it was after we spoke at that meeting a couple of meetings ago. And I hope you did say something to them, but if you did, it didn't help. There's no reason. In plain English, who the H do they think they are? You don't treat anybody that way, especially people that are paying your bill. Secondly, I just like, and I don't expect anybody to comment, so don't think that I do, about the Red Bud Lane issue. What about, in your consideration, instead of concrete barriers, breakaway ballards that are used for emergency vehicles, so that if there is, God forbid, a fire with the close proximity of the houses or units, one thing could lead to the other. I know about firewalls and all that stuff, but for something, for a catastrophic or an emergency, the fire trucks, they just break away. Otherwise, you can't drive through. And I think that's a compromise. It's a little bit of an assurance to the people in case there's an emergency. So if you would look into it and consider that, just a suggestion. Real quick, 30 seconds. When, I'm sorry, I don't remember the ordinance concerning the open house real estate signs. When are they supposed, aren't they supposed to be taken away Monday? Aren't they supposed to be only there for the weekend?
Sunday night.
That's correct.
That's what I
They're supposed to come
thought.
down.
Well, I've seen a few that don't bother. As a matter of fact, one on the way over tonight at the end of Vanderveer on 524.
If you would just, if you wouldn't mind, call code enforcement, tell them the
No,
name of
Mrs.
who the
Hoover's
real
here
estate.
tonight.
What's that?
Mrs. Hoover's here tonight.
Mrs. Hoover. Okay.
I'm sure she's taking
If you
notes.
would, if you would just call code enforcement,
And I'll-
tell them the name of the sign, where it is, and it'll come
Okay.
down and it'll be dealt with.
But it's, one time, I could say somebody had a problem, whatever. But this particular company, I've seen several places. It's the green signs, I won't,
At the corner of 524 and Vanderveer Road?
right at the end of Vanderveer Road. Okay,
Okay,
just
thank
so
you,
you know.
Mrs. Smith.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, that's going to close the regular public portion until we get to discussion on matters dealing with ordinances. And I just would like to call the council's attention to our consent agenda items. This is a combination workshop and regular meeting. So if anyone would like any items to be acted on separately, I'd ask you to do so. In addition, we have items that need to be added on. I'll read them aloud and ask for a motion. We have Articles 9A7, which is amending the 2007 salary ordinance. We have 9B39, which is constructing a trail connection to the link of Oak Glen Park to the Manasquan Reservoir. We have 9B40, authorizing the appointment of James Fagan, Esquire, to represent Police Officer David Levin in connection with a duty-related complaint. We have 9B41, which is authorizing the approval of additional funds for the COA planner, Birdsall Engineering. 9B42, authorizing a contract with Monmouth County's Conservation Foundation to aid the township in connection with open space issues and farmland preservation for calendar year 2007. And finally, 9B43 is a request to add on an article to authorize the award of a contract extension for 1 year, an existing agreement that is, with respect to emergency medical services, the EMS billing service, with no contract changes. So I'd ask that a member of the council please make a motion to introduce those articles.
Mayor, I make a motion that we add on.
Okay, we have a motion. We need a second, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This is just to add these items on for potential discussion. Any comments? This is just on the add-on. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, we have obviously our consent agenda items. Those would include, obviously, all of the 9B items. These are various resolutions. If anyone would like a separate vote on any item, just please indicate you'd like a separate vote.
Mayor, I'd like a separate vote on 9B3, 15, 16, 22, 24, and 31.
Let me just read them back so I have them all. 9B3, 15, 16, 22, 24, and 31.
Correct.
Mrs. Dalton, any separate votes?
I think, Mr. Mayor, it's important that we have a separate vote on 9B19 and 9B20 to call the public's attention to the fact that when instructions aren't followed, we do deny final approvals and releases of bonds.
Okay, that sounds good. Mr. Walsh, anything for separate vote?
No, they about covered them. Thank you.
Okay. I would ask the council for consideration at this time for an additional add-on pursuant to our discussion in closed session, which would become Article 9B44, which would be a resolution to appoint Ms. Helene Schlegel as the interim township manager effective August 7th. I'd like a member of the council just to, I should have mentioned it before, to have that for an add-on, please.
Mayor, should I amend my motion?
I don't think we could just do it quickly. So this, you have a motion to add it on. Mr. Howell, you're making the second.
Second.
This is merely to add on that item, which again would be for the record 9B44. This is to add on. Ms. Woolman, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. And just because of the separate vote on 9B44. Are there any other comments or reasons for discussion with respect to any of these 9B articles? And just by way of reference, this would include the 9C motions, which are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Any comments from the council?
9C, 1, 2, 3, and 4.
This includes accepting, vacancy on the Preservation Task Force. I don't know that we're in a position to talk about that this evening unless someone would like to make a motion. We have to accept resignations, and there is a raffle. Are we in a position where we'd like to talk about these this evening? Ms. Dalton?
Mr. Mayor, in light of the importance of making appointments, et cetera, I would like to move that we table 9C 1, 2, and 3 to our next meeting.
Certainly.
And that we act on 9C4.
That's terrific. With respect to 9C3, the Class 2 is by statute the mayor's appointment, and I'm actually going through now, with the assistance of Mr. Chinyetsky, a review of who the eligible individuals are. There is some criteria with respect to who's eligible for that position, an official of the town, an employee, if you will. So I would expect that by the time we have our next meeting, I'll be in a position to report back to you on that. So we have a motion, perhaps we can act on it now if there is a second, please, to table 9C 1, 2, and 3. Is there a second?
Second, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or remarks on the table? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, let's go through these one by one. Let's I'd ask for a motion to make this as simple as practical. For all consent agenda resolution items, excluding 9B3, 15, 16, 22, 24, 31, 19, 20, and 44. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second, Mayor.
Motion and a second. Any comments on the motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. The next item to be individually acted upon, call the council's attention to 9B3, authorizing cash repair deposit, potential release of performance bond, New Jersey American Water, road opening permit for Newton's Corner and Ramtown Greenville. Mr. Howell, the floor is yours, sir.
Mayor, if I could ask the manager, Tom, this is the, and I don't know if I should be asking you this or Mr. Nunziato, but this is the road that New Jersey American paved from Arnold Boulevard to the four-way stop and beyond that we had all of those issues with, where the road was cracking. It was, are all of those repairs done? I know at one point Mr. Nunziato had told me that they went out and calculated there was like 1,900 linear feet of cracks, and then they repaired those, and then new ones developed.
These are all recommendations by the engineer, so I will let him respond.
Mr. Nunziato, what do you have for us?
The original cracks that were developed in the surface course when they did the overlay were done by one of the subcontractors, okay? They did not do the entire project. Our inspector had gone out, and again, it is a very heavily traveled traffic area. It's not, it's very difficult to sit there and try to paint all the cracks, if you will, but
Right.
they had gone back out under our supervision and had done a second seal of the cracks, and they did get them in their entirety, and that's why we're recommending it at this point.
Okay. I just wanted to ensure that that was complete.
Yes, they were back twice.
Okay.
All right, I'd ask for a motion, please, and a second on 9B3.
May I make a motion that we approve 9B3?
And we need a second, please.
Second, Mayor.
Motion and a second. Any final comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, 9B15. Mr. Howell, I believe you wanted to talk about this one. Go
Mayor,
ahead, sir.
if we could group 15 and 16 together, they're both the same individual.
Absolutely.
This individual came before the planning board, I believe, 3 or 4 weeks ago, asking for an extension of time on one of the projects, and he was due to come back to present this second case, which the first, there was 2 different cases that he had. We were waiting for him to come back to see if we were going to grant the extension of time. So I would like to hold off these until he appears back in front of the planning board.
All right, if we may, Mr. Chernetsky, to you or the solicitor, what's your position on this?
Just in reading the statement, it also authorizes the acceptance of fees on our part, right? Correct?
Mr. Nunziato, do you want to also respond to Mr. Howell's concerns?
I need a minute to get to that.
Okay.
I can tell you that it's not a given that he's going to receive an extension of time on this.
Okay. Mr. Bongiovanni, from a legal perspective, not to ask you to give an on-the-spot judicial review here, but in the event that we do not act on this evening in light of Mr. Howell's concerns, is there some concern or repercussions for the township?
I think
If you would,
maybe like
I hate to ask you if you could just, that's okay.
This may be one where they have 45 days to take
I don't think we
action.
can, I'm sorry. There you go.
45 days to take action. It's normally stated in the paperwork. that
Can't hear you.
It's normally stated in the paperwork that accompanies the resolution as to whether or not there's a deadline on getting this adopted. So I'd have to look back at the rest of the documents.
All right, do you gentlemen want a minute? We can move to the next items that we'll act on individually.
The only question I would have is, this application, this minor subdivision, does it have its final approval at this point, or is it requesting its extension of time to grant the final?
I can't honestly tell you. I know that he has 2 different applications in front of the planning board, and he came to us because he didn't have his engineering and woodlands management, because he said something was going on with his engineer. He wasn't working on the project when he was supposed to. So we were waiting. He was instructed when he came back to the planning board to be heard on his other application to bring that engineer with him. So, and that would be the determination as to whether or not he was granted this extension of time.
Let me ask a technical question, if I may, Mr. Bongiovanni. Can we alter this resolution and add verbiage that says that this is all pursuant to any and all final approvals that may or may not be granted by the planning board? And would that give us the sort of an assurance that Mr. Howell might be looking for?
It's not already in the ordinance. It's not already in the resolution. I don't see how anybody could object to that being put in the resolution.
Okay, so, Mr. Howell, if I gave a technical recommendation, perhaps someone could make this in the form of altering 15 and 16, that such approvals would be subject to any and all additional approvals that may or may not be granted by the planning board. From a technical perspective, would that satisfy your very valid concerns?
Yes, that would be
All right,
fine.
my
Mayor.
recommendation then would be for a member of the council to make a motion to introduce 9B, 15, and 16, amending the stated explanatory statement and resolution to include verbiage that suggests what I just said.
So moved, Mayor.
Yeah,
We have a motion, we need a second.
I'll second it, Mayor.
Mr. Bongiovanni, are you comfortable with the way that's been introduced?
Would you restate it again, because I want a copy?
Sure.
Of the
The statement would include that such approval would be subjected to any and all final approvals that may or may not be granted by the planning board. Is that satisfactory?
Absolutely.
So if the planning board says no, then unfortunately this would not stand. If the planning board did, then we certainly wouldn't be standing in their way. Is that satisfactory?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton, go right ahead.
This resolution is to accept fees.
That's one of them.
Okay.
I think there's also, they're required to make certain site improvements in the event that they were to get an extension, which was Mr. Howell's concern. His observation is they might not necessarily get the extension, and the extent that they don't, have we bound the municipality, if you will, to something now that's contradictory to a potential outcome the planning board may take?
See, the reference to it is that it's posting it as a condition of a planning board approval, and Mr. Howell has rightfully brought up the question of the status of that planning board approval. So,
Okay. Any additional comments or concerns? All right, hearing none, we have a motion and a second on 9B, 15, and 16 as amended. Ms. Wellman, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes?
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Next is 9B, 22. Mr. Howell, I'll again turn it over to you, sir.
Mayor, I'd like to see this removed. The Oak Glen Estates project was denied by the planning board.
Okay?
I don't see a need to grant preliminary water approval, which also begs the question of, why would we be granting preliminary water approval to Northwoods ahead of them going to the planning board or zoning board if we're seeing the preliminary water approval for Oak Glen Estates after they've already been and denied?
I'm not sure why it was done that way, but I can understand the logic of having the preliminary approval before you go to the planning board, because otherwise, why should the planning board really hear you? If you can't have water at your site, how could you be approved? So.
Well, I'll probably be asking you the same question on 9B24.
Okay.
Was that was similarly denied, Mr. Howell, 9B24?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, so on the issue of 9B22, since it has been denied from a parliamentary procedure, a motion to remove or a motion to strike from the agenda, is that appropriate, Mr. Bongiovanni?
You can either do that or vote down the resolution.
Okay, whatever the pleasure of the council is, if someone would like to make a motion on 9B22, please go right ahead.
Mayor, I make a motion that we deny 9B22.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
Mayor.
Second to Mr. Walsh. Any final comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. The next item,
Mayor, I'm
9B24. Mr.
Mayor, may I
Howell?
just point out that these were recommendations by the utility engineer, not the township engineer.
Right.
Okay. On 9B24, Mr. Howell, what's your concerns for us
Mayor,
on that?
If I may, this is another situation where this applicant's already been granted an approvals, preliminary, and I believe final by the planning board, and now they're coming to get their preliminary water approval. And this is on that road that we just spoke about releasing the bond on, which was paved less than 2 years ago. end to end. And it's my understanding, and I asked the planning board attorney, in cases like this, where we've had two applicants on Ramtown Greenville Road, I said, do we have to grant their approvals for their developments? They said, as long as they're in compliance, but if they do not get all their outside agency approvals, they can't build, which, meaning, if we don't grant them a road opening permit or a preliminary water approval, they can't get to the water unless they open a road. So the building would be on hold. So I don't understand why we would be authorizing somebody their preliminary water approval, which in turn would say, allow them to say, well, you gave me water approval and you knew the road was new, so why won't you let me cut a hole in a new road now?
All right, so from a technical perspective, either Mr. Chernetsky or Mr. Bongiovanni, is there a reaction to Mr. Howell's concerns?
Well, I would have to defer to the engineer on this one.
Might I suggest that maybe this should be pulled for this evening and you
Well,
need to research it?
The road opening ordinance that we do have in effect makes certain provisions. There's a protocol that's followed as far as road openings and any roads that are to be paved, capital projects, if you will, in a 5-year window. It's typically the same process that the county follows, and you would know from correspondence that they come in and they say, we're slated to pave a certain number of roads in the township this year. If there's any capital projects you would like to get done, you try to get them done before that window. The process that we follow is similar to that, but in our case, what we normally do and the precedent we have set is we've allowed people to, I deny them initially as the engineering department, and then they come back before the council and they request a waiver, and the waiver normally is, let me do a little 3x3 opening in the road, we'll restore it, and we'll infrared surface treatment it. That's normally what we do. We've set that precedent. We could actually deny them if we chose to. However, all the I's and T's have to be followed, dotted the I's, crossing the T's in that ordinance. And if they didn't have water per se, I suppose they could put a well in to provide their water service.
I don't know that they'd be able to put a well in if there's water. There's actually two water lines, one for New Jersey American and one for Parkway, running in front of the property.
Well, again, I would maybe defer that to Mr. Bongiovanni, but nonetheless, I mean, you can't get a building permit unless you have some way to address your water and your sewer.
Bill, isn't this just to explain, just to verify that there's a presence of public water?
Yes, again, but I think Mr. Howell has been, asking from just a procedural standpoint, if in fact someone applied for water, could they be denied because there's a moratorium?
And Tom, this project has already received preliminary and final from the planning board, so they're coming after.
In some cases, the board, and I don't know, because I haven't read it, but in some cases, the boards may, give approval pending receipt of things. These things are requested, voted on, and spelled out in a resolution. So we would have to ask the utility engineer why he's recommending it at this point. So we could hold it if you'd like until we get that explanation.
Let me also add, too, that what has happened in the past, and again, you're aware from the planning board level, street names take an exorbitant amount of time because of duplication with other towns, and there have been some areas where people have gone back to the board for extensions of time on things that maybe should have been done prior to, and we've worked with the zoning board, the planning board, and the manager's office to try to streamline the process. We've actually asked the planning board and the zoning board in their review letters up front, the initial review, to put in there water and sewer should be applied as outside agencies to try to speed this process up so they happen either before or they might not even get on the agenda, but yet they're requiring or requesting preliminary approvals. So we expedite that process and they don't come back at a later date for extensions because they don't know about outside agency approvals and they've already got their board finals.
Right. Well, and I know that is now the case at the planning board. That's on the submission waivers, and Mr. Peters is very diligent about making sure that those are sought before the application goes past the waiver process.
Right. So that's why some are open and some are not.
What I don't want to see, and you have said that it's been a precedent that they come back and say we'll cut a 3x3. I want to set a new precedent that says it's a brand new road, you ain't cutting a hole in it.
There is a process where before a road would be slated for paving, let's suppose we announce our capital program for 2007, 2008. We would have to send a certified letter to any and all residents that would be affected by this overlay, okay, all the property owners and the utility companies as well. And if we send a certified list to them and give them proper notice to get their improvements in prior to the overlay,
Okay.
I think we would be able to deny their permits with justification.
Okay. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we do not approve 9B24.
Okay, we have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
Motion and a second, any additional comments? Hearing none, roll call. This is a motion to deny.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes?
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. 9B31. Mr. Howell, again, I think you had a comment on this one as well, sir. Go right ahead.
Mayor, this goes to the same, it's the sewer for that same project. So I would make a motion that we deny 9B31 as well.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any additional comments or remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes?
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, there was also a recommendation for 9B19. This was merely, I think, to Ms. Dalton's point, to articulate that oftentimes performance guarantees, releases, if you will, are denied. So, Ms. Dalton, would you like to make a motion on 9B19?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we approve 9B19 to deny the performance guarantee release for Fairfield Road Business Park, case number SP-814.
Would you be willing to also make that motion to incorporate 9B20, which is a similar
I certainly
denial?
would.
Okay, we have a motion. We need a second, please.
I'll second, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional comments or remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please. 9B19 and 20.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. The last item is 9B44. Again, this is to appoint Ms. Helene Schlegel as interim township manager effective August 7th. I'd ask for a motion, please.
I make a motion that we appoint Helene Schlegel as interim township manager on August 7, 2007.
We need a second, please.
Second?
Any comments or remarks?
Yeah, I have some comments.
Go right ahead, Mr. Walsh.
I think she's done a tremendous job as a deputy manager. I've taken a lot of information from our current manager, Mr. Chinesky, who I have a lot of respect for. And I think it is a wise, steady course for Howell Township at this time, under the circumstances that are before us. She's been a how many year resident of Howell Township, Ms. Schlegel?
24.
24. Mrs. Smith thinks she's a puppy.
Thank you.
She's been a 24-year resident. She's been with the township for many years and in different capacities, and I think she will do a fine job as an interim manager for Howell Township. Looking forward to working with her, and we will do an extensive search to see what is out there as far as management for Howell Township in the future. So I don't think part of the reasons why we are making the decision now, in my eyes, is the last time we searched for a manager, everything was pretty steady at the time, and it still took, I believe, 4 months. And many interviews, many extra nights of being in executive session doing interviews. So with the summertime upon us, I believe it will be another extended search. I don't have anything imminent on my mind, except I look forward to working with Ms. Schlegel, and I think she'll do a fine job, and we'll take it from there over a period of time and try to make a decision over who will best serve Howell Township for a long period of time after that. So,
Any other comments or remarks from the council? Just very briefly, Mrs. Schlegel started here as a part-time employee, and she has risen through the ranks, and it is a sincere pleasure to have her in the capacity that she has been in, and with Mr. Chernetsky leaving, while as unfortunate as it is, I couldn't think of anyone who's more qualified to keep this ship afloat until we have a permanent manager. And the community is in exceptionally capable hands with Mrs. Schlegel, and she certainly has my total and complete confidence, and I think I speak for everybody. So good luck, Mrs. Schlegel.
Mayor, may I?
Mr. Chernetsky, please,
offer just a
go
point
right
or
ahead,
two?
sir.
When I started here, I sent all the department heads a copy of the ICMA, International City Managers Association's Code of Conducts and Ethics. And when I went to visit Helene in her office making my initial rounds, she had framed it and put it up over her desk. And those guidelines are...
Brown noser.
I also saw she had your picture on her desk.
So this should tell you she's a very shrewd woman. And when I interviewed for deputy manager, I likewise, like with all the department heads, focused on professionalism, neutrality, delivering the best possible advice to council with the full faith of the community behind that decision. And when I looked for the deputy, I realized I didn't have to look very far. And I know Helene is committed to our profession and to its highest ideals, and I have great faith and confidence that she'll do an outstanding job as your interim.
Okay, any final comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, we have... We have, under unfinished business, a variety of public hearings on ordinances. We're going to begin, obviously, with 8A1. We had an introduction on June the 12th for 00722, and this evening is slated for the public hearing and a potential adoption. So I want to call the council's attention again to 8A1. And if you'll forgive me, unfortunately, the backup on 8A1 is not in my...
Mayor, if I may offer a summary of this.
Go right ahead, Mr. Chairman.
The governing body was approached by both the zoning board in their annual report and a resident who was fighting an issue regarding a judicial decision, and the request was made to strengthen our laws. Council gave us direction to proceed with the development of those ordinances. This is the first installation, and it excludes dogs from the definition of livestock. Essentially, it mirrors the state definition of agricultural use. I believe that was always the intent of what's in our ordinance, and that the state had changed theirs over the years, but ours just didn't keep pace with the state changes. So basically, this definition mirrors the state's definition of agricultural use.
Okay. All right, accordingly, ordinance number 00722, introduced and passed on the first reading on June 12, 2007, and published according to law, is now being taken upon for further consideration in a public hearing. An affidavit of the publication of the ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of June 15, 2007 is submitted, and it is also noted that the copy of the ordinance was posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and the copies were also available to the general public upon request. I'd like to open up the meeting to anyone who might like to enter any testimony, comments for or against the adoption of this ordinance. If you'd like to be recognized, please come forward. Yes, Councilor. Just by show of hands, anyone else who would like to be heard on this, if you just give me a quick show of hands on this particular item. Okay. Good evening, Councilor. If you would introduce yourself, of course. If you need to make a presentation, it might be helpful if you'd put it on that ledge, and we can flip the light switch that's right next to it. Please. And if you'd hit the switch right next to it, it'll put the overhead light on it. To your right. Yep, thank you, sir.
Maybe that wasn't the best place for those low-energy bulbs.
Councilor, if you just please give us your name and address for the record and identify who you're here representing.
Budgetary issues, Councilman.
Good evening, Craig Giannetti of the law firm Giordano, Holleran and Ciesla, on behalf of Kindred Souls Canine Center LLC, as well as Marie Appello and June Noto. Kindred Souls Canine Center LLC is located at 75 Brown Road, Howell Township, Block 71, Lot 29.01. At the outset, I received a copy of this ordinance, or found out about this ordinance essentially approximately a week ago. As soon as I found out about it, I shot off a letter to the Township Council, which I believe you received.
We have.
I tried to have our planner, who is the planner that will be testifying in support of our application before the zoning board, but due to the short notice, she already had a conflict and was unable to get coverage. And I would like to request that this issue be carried to the next meeting so that the planner can be available to present testimony.
All right, you're asking, you want us to comment on that request?
Yes.
Okay, so the first comment for the council's consideration is a request for us not to act on this evening so that this counselor and your client will have additional time to comment on it.
Yeah, we'd like our planner to be present to testify.
It's the pleasure of the council. Ms. Dalton, would you like to go first?
I think if we are going to consider that perhaps would the appropriate way to do that be to allow Mr. Genetti to speak as well as anyone else who's here from the public, and may we then limit the following meeting's testimony to Mr. Genetti's planner, or do we have to open it up again?
I mean, you could give this kind of deference, but there is this is an ordinance hearing. It's not a hearing on his application. So it would be a little bit unusual to postpone the ordinance because of the absence of the planner. If the board wishes to carry it after all the rest of the evidence is in, or if it hasn't been finished tonight after a reasonable time, that might be another way to approach it, the way I think Councilwoman Dalton is suggesting.
Yeah, my recommendation, for whatever it's worth to the council, is we have people here tonight who want to make comments for or against, and in the event that after we've heard all the testimony, there is an interest in carrying, we would simply carry this to the next meeting, carry the hearing, and that's in fact if the council even decides to carry it. I mean, with respect, the position of the council may be they've heard enough evidence, and if there isn't an obligation, if you will, to have to carry it because we've satisfied all of the advertising, we may not. So I think, unless the council disagrees, it might make sense for you to proceed with what evidence you would like to entertain or like us to entertain. We'll hear from the rest of the public, and after consideration, we may then decide to act on your request.
May I ask the name of your planner, by the way? Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
It's Christine Cafone. She was with Shore de Palma. She recently left and is with, I believe, Phillips something or other.
Okay.
And just to clarify, I wanted the planner present. Mainly the request here tonight is going to be threefold, essentially. First, not to adopt the ordinance amendment as is, amending the definition, or in the alternative, to amend the definition to specifically exclude dog boarding and grooming, but not dog training, and drawing a distinction between them and allowing dog training use. And I'd have her testify as to the differences between the use and the appropriateness of dog training as opposed to grooming and kenneling in the zone in which the property is located in.
Okay.
A second item I saw as part of the CME letter of May 2007, which is essentially the genesis of all this, and in addition to recommending amendment to the agricultural use definition, they also had essentially a proposed ordinance or conditional use standards. Has anything been acted on as to that?
No, it's still being worked on. I think in the near future there may be a full ordinance ready.
And just, I have limited time to review this. Has this ordinance been referred to the planning board for review pursuant to the municipal land use law?
Mr. Pangiovanni?
Yes.
It has been.
Well, essentially, we're here tonight on behalf of Kindred Hills Canine Center, LLC, who operates a dog training facility on the property, which is located on the board. I know it's difficult for you to see, but it's essentially the red blocked property, and then it has all the surrounding zones, lots, and areas around it. The shaded areas are vacant, identified different uses, the yellow being, I believe, a farm residential use, and then the gray area being vacant land. The applicant right now has an application pending before the Zoning Board of Adjustment. There's a long history to this application, which I outlined in the letter. The application pending right now is seeking an interpretation that their dog training facility is a permitted use under the present definition of agricultural use in the ARE-2 zone, and in the alternative, they seek a use variance. In addition, there's 2 municipal court summonses pending against my client for operating a use in nonconformance with the zone and without a site plan. The applicant here tonight is requesting that the Township Council either leave the ordinance amendment or the definition of agricultural use as is, or amend the definition to exclude dog grooming and kenneling, but not excluding dog training and permitting a dog training facility to operate within the ARE-2 zone, as there's a distinction between them, and there's clearly a benefit, as it will outline, for a dog training facility, in particular for use such as theirs. I know you have the background, but essentially in 1998 they had an application for a use variance to operate. They saw a grooming, pet care, and training facility, which was denied. In 2000, there was the very famous Geese Police case, which essentially, in our interpretation, declared that dog training was a permitted use under an agricultural use within the ARE-2 zone. They read that article in the news transcript, believed it was permitted, and began to operate since 2000. They've been operating since that time, open to the public. They never had an issue, never had a complaint. No one ever filed. I'm not aware of anything being filed with the township as to their use. And it wasn't only discovered until they went in for, I believe, renovations to their property. When they went to come in for the permit, it was discovered that there was an area being used for dog training. And that was the genesis of how we were issued summonses. We went to the zoning board in January of 2007, seeking interpretation that we were a permitted use. It was a long back and forth with the board. We were clearly in disagreement, but I like to believe in an effort to not proceed to litigation, they recommended applying for a use variance in the alternative. We informed them we had a deadline of July 17th, and we didn't feel that would, be the proper course for us, but they indicated they would contact code enforcement and request that they not enforce that deadline while our application was pending. We subsequently submitted an application to amend it to include a use variance application. They were issued summonses again for operating a use not in conformance with the zone. We've worked out with code enforcement that that will not be tried until the zoning board issue is resolved. And essentially now we're in this instance where we have a hearing date of September 27th. However, there's this ordinance amendment as well as the potential for the conditional use standards to kind of come up the road, and we want to address it at this point. Kindred Souls Canine Center operates a dog training facility. There's no grooming, no pet care, and no kenneling. Dogs are not kept overnight. Individuals bring their dog to their business. The individuals are there with their dogs while they are trained. The training focuses on their standard obedience training, but a substantial portion of it deals with what's called pet therapy training. And this training trains dogs to essentially be better community members in which they're able to operate and be conducive to, for instance, hospitals, hospices, working with autistic children, deaf children, and they have to get certified as such, and this training provides for it. And I provided a list of some of the programs that this Kindred Souls have trained dogs that were certified under this pet therapy program, which included the New Jersey Library for the Blind and Handicapped, the New Hope Children's Foundation, the Howell Township Public Library, children of the Katzenbach School of the Deaf, the American Sign Language Story, and the Howell Township Local 4 through 4-H. It's our request that the board make a distinction between dog kenneling and dog grooming as opposed to dog training. The use should be compatible with the surrounding area. And just to give an example, as part of the zoning board application, one of the comments from the Farming Advisory Board, I believe it was called, was this may not be an appropriate use because dogs, have the potential of killing other livestock like cows or horses or something along that, which I feel proves our point on why this use is needed. This is dog training to make these dogs better members of the community. It's not seeking to, I know concerns are about barking and having these dogs, how they're going to be affected in the community and the surrounding area. But that's the particular use that this facility specializes in making these dogs better members of the community, and being able to function around humans and function around sick children and function in a setting where typically dogs would be a problem. Now, we acknowledge there's, the Geese Police case, the recent Mandol case, and other issues which have warranted such action. And
Hold on 1 second. Mr. Meyer, are you raising the issue of a point of order?
He is trying a case which is currently in front of the Board of Adjustment. The council has no jurisdiction over this at this time.
The only thing I would mention with respect to the point of order, and I have enormous respect for Mr. Meyer, he knows that, but in fairness, using an incidental motion has to come from a member of the board. We cannot accept a point of order from the General Assembly, and that is pursuant to Robert's Rules of Order.
That's correct, and also, Mr. Mayor, it may look like he's retrying his case and stuff like that, but he has to explain his reasons for wanting the council not to adopt this ordinance somehow. So I would give him some latitude on this.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Meyer. We do sincerely appreciate your concerns, for sure.
And I appreciate the council's opinion as to that, because it does impact, the ordinance itself is impacting our application, which is why we're here tonight in the first place. And we think there is a definite need to differentiate between the dog kennel and the grooming facility. Or at least acknowledge that the change in the ordinance is because the cases have interpreted dog training to be a permitted use as an agricultural use in the Geese Police case and the Madolo case.
Let me stop right there, if I may,
Sure.
Councilor. Mr. Bongiovanni, I know you've had some experience, at least from a historical perspective, conscious of the Geese Police ruling, if you will. How does that ruling and or interpretation influence what we're looking to act upon, and is there an inherent contradiction?
If I were weighing it from a standpoint of a use variance application, I would draw a distinction between the type of training from that facility, which is, from what I understand, for a very specific purpose, specific kind of training. This is more general training. I believe that the dogs that are trained by the Geese Police are his own dogs that he uses in this commercial enterprise to chase geese and all that. So it's somewhat different when you have other people's dogs being brought in for training. That's a different kind of training. But that's if I was looking at it only from that standpoint of comparing, does this meet this interpretation? Isn't this just like this other use? What really is the question is how is that relevant really to what the council's trying to achieve by this ordinance? And I'm not sure that as of yet we've really heard a rationale for why this is relevant to what the council's trying to do.
Okay, Councilor?
It's relevant in the sense of we have an application pending before the zoning board. Part of that application is requesting an interpretation. Our interpretation request will probably change in the event the ordinance is adopted, as we wouldn't be seeking an interpretation that we're permitted use. We'd be seeking an interpretation that we are pre-existing non-conforming use and permitted to operate pursuant to the municipal land use law. And we're seeking to get essentially an acknowledgement in changing this ordinance that is the case. And we believe the council has the authority to do it when explaining its reasonings for changing the ordinance. This has been an ongoing saga for my clients. This is their livelihood they've been dealing with. They want to stay in Howell Township. They offer tremendous services for the Township of Howell, for the members of the community, and I could see where this is going with the zoning board.
Well, let me, hold on one second. And in fact, I appreciate Mr. Meyer raising the concern that he did, and I'm certain the council doesn't have a problem with me suggesting this. We have absolutely no position on the application that you may or may not have pending with the zoning board. Quite frankly, the four of us don't want to know the first thing about it. We absolutely cannot in any way, shape, or form weigh into our decision, your application at all. So whatever that issue is you have in front of the zoning board, it's got nothing to do with us. And so I would encourage you to attempt to not sort of give that to us as a rationale, if you will, in terms of explaining your position. I mean, you're welcome to do whatever you need to do in front of the zoning board, and that's certainly your applicant's right. But I want to attempt to make sure we understand what you're asking us for, and what you'd like us to consider with respect to the potential adoption of this ordinance would be to make a stipulation to allow for dog training. And in summation,
Correct.
That's what you're looking for?
Correct.
Okay.
Drawing a distinction between dog kenneling and grooming as opposed to training.
Okay.
You know,
Mr. Walsh, go ahead,
I'd
sir.
like to say something. I don't, I'm fine that you want us to give an interpretation of what's what. But please, I mean, a lot of assumptions. I don't know if that's, you know what's going with the zoning board, you know, please stay away from that.
What I'm concerned about is we have summonses presently outstanding, and we have an application pending before the zoning board. We're trying to see if there's a way, and we understand the board. I mean, I remember at the interpretation, the zoning board's concerns was, we don't want kennels popping up all over the place because we're saying you're a permitted use.
Let me suggest this, and the deputy mayor raises an excellent point. It was the point I was trying to make before. Just for the record, since this is an official hearing on an ordinance, this council is in no way, shape, or form even remotely considering any activity you may have at the zoning board level, or any activity you may or may not have with respect to a judicial issue dealing with the courts, a zoning issue whatsoever. That has no influence on this hearing. It has no bearing on our decision. We are
I'd like to
only
answer that.
acting, and please, we're only acting on your request to ask us to allow for dog training to be separately identified. I don't want to in any way jeopardize the authenticity of what may or may not happen when we take action. Mr. Bongiovanni, you want to add anything else for the
There's
record?
two other things. One is that if the variance was ever approved, the use variance can be appealed. And that would be appealed to the council. So, you know, obviously, we don't want to talk about a case that we may have to stand in and
Correct.
hear an appeal on. And then secondly, because you're talking so much about the zoning board case, we've got a member of the zoning board here, and I really don't want to hear any testimony from a zoning board member.
Agreed.
Sure.
All right, so Counselor, can you add for our benefit, and
Sure.
you have to be comfortable that you've given your testimony because this is a public hearing, but I want to see if you could add any additional commentary for our consideration around why you would like us to amend the adoption of this ordinance so that it allows for dog training. And if you could maybe focus on that issue, since that appears to be the substance of what you'd like us to consider, I think that might be an appropriate use of your continued time.
Sure, and I've outlined the proposed use and why we feel there should be a distinction between the two. And unfortunately, I can't testify as to other planning reasons as to why we feel there should be a distinction and why a dog training use in these or in the zones that permit an agricultural use should be distinguished as opposed to dog grooming and kenneling. I was hoping to have a planner testify to that. But again, the request is to have the a distinction drawn between dog kenneling and grooming as opposed to training.
Okay, we appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Anyone else who'd like to be heard? Hold on one second, Mrs. Smith. This woman in the blue, you were next, actually. I saw your hand earlier. Come on up, ma'am. Yes.
Mayor, could I ask a quick question?
You had raised your hand? Yes. Yes, you. I don't know your name, so I apologize. We'll get to... You're not a resident. If you are not a resident, it is the pleasure of the council to determine whether or not we are interested in your testimony. Where do you live?
Mr. Genetti's not a resident either.
He's a township professional.
Okay, it's really, Mr. Bongiovanni, it's my recollection that the council is not obligated to hear comments from non-residents.
Not obligated, no.
Okay. So, okay.
The attorney's working
Folks,
for
hold on,
residential
hold on
business.
one second. The attorney is here on behalf of residents, so they have a representation. It's really up to the pleasure of the council if we would like to entertain comments, and we certainly don't mean any disrespect to anyone who isn't a resident, but as you can appreciate, our constituency are those people who live in our community. Mrs. Dalton?
I want to make a point on that.
Please.
You know, because I've sat up here for 6 months, and I've sat in the audience for even longer, and, you know, every time there comes up an issue about a detention basin or a project in Freehold that impacts people who live in Howell, the people up here and people out there get vehemently angry that no one in Freehold cares at all about what we think and how it affects us. So if there are people out there in neighboring towns, I say let them speak. I want to know what they think too.
I certainly have no objection. My only point is it has to be, there needs to be an action by the council. I can't make that action. Someone from the council needs to make that in the form of a motion.
I'll make a motion that we let somebody from outside of town speak. I've never denied him before.
We have a motion, we just need a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Ma'am, you're welcome to come on up. We would just ask that you please give us your name and address for the official record.
Before the resident or non-resident, I apologize, comes up to speak, I just need to ask a simple question. All that we're being asked to do with this ordinance is to mirror the state law as we've been asked to do on other occasions where we changed the notification from 500 feet to 200 feet, where we've been, maybe not this council, but other councils in the past have been asked to do is mirror exactly the state law so that we're consistent with state statutes. Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening. Make yourself comfortable. If you just please give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Trudy Poole. I live in Lake Como, 2006 Main
Would you
Street.
mind just pull a little closer?
Is that better?
That's terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. I have trained 3 therapy dogs. And when I say I've trained them, it means that I've taken my dogs to group classes run by instructors, so that, in effect, I'm being taught how to train the dogs. I've just graduated my third dog, having been trained by Mr. Lehman at Kindred Souls. By far, it is the best therapy dog training that I've ever undergone. It is incredible. I have a picture of the dog that's been trained. He's a German Shepherd adopted from the Monmouth County SPCA. He was 75 pounds. He was 4 years of age in 94 when I adopted him. He's now 7. He's 95 pounds. I'm 129. He had some problems. He was a guard dog before I got him. He'd never lived in a house or anything. And now he is a therapy dog. He's also passed the AKC, Canine Good Citizenship Test, which is a rigorous test indicating that he'll be well behaved most of the time. He's not perfect. Last Sunday, or July 8th, I should say, I conducted a church service bringing him to the service around the spirituality of canine companionship. He was perfect. We came in late. There were people seated in a semicircle with their backs to us. He just walked down. We walked in and among every person. Everybody wanted to pet him. Now, he hasn't gone out yet on visits to hospitals or anything. He's just been certified. But the dogs I had before, we took to senior citizen residences, and there were people who would pet the dogs and wanted to visit the dogs who I was told had never spoken. The whole time they were there, they hadn't spoken at all. But everybody wanted to talk about the dogs. Everybody wanted to pet the dogs. I know that the dogs are taken to libraries and schools where children who are afraid to read aloud because they're scared to death somebody's going to laugh at them and poke fun at them because they don't read well. They'll read to dogs because dogs don't laugh at them. Right now with my dog, what I would like to do, I'm trying to get some connections with the prosecutor's office. I would like to take my dogs into the shelters for battered women and their children to help normalize very traumatic time for them, having the dogs to pet and kind of just relax them and also to be involved with children who are brought to the police for interviewing. It helps relax the children who some of them can draw, but those who are reluctant to speak, teenagers, they don't want to talk about anything, but they'll relax with the dogs.
I have to interrupt you for 1 second.
Okay.
And your comments and your testimony are wonderful.
Okay.
Sincerely appreciated. I would be remiss in my role as the chair if I
Yes.
didn't just articulate a couple of ground rules. And I
Okay.
don't in any way say this to stifle the discussion. However, according to the regulations, if you will, that govern the hearing of an ordinance, what the council has to decide is whether or not there is enough evidence to suggest that we should vote for this, amend it, or vote against it. And so what we need you to clarify, and I would certainly defer to the solicitor in the event that I'm not communicating this correctly, is what we need to hear is your comment about whether or not you think we should adopt the ordinance, make changes to the ordinance, or deny the ordinance.
Make changes.
Okay, so, and that certainly, this explanation, if you wouldn't mind, to members of the public, it's a technical procedure. We certainly don't want to have anyone be denied the right to speak on a technicality, but legitimately, we have to be very specific, if you will, around should we adopt it, should we amend it, or should we vote it down? So you just suggested you think it should be amended, and perhaps you would give us your explanation of how you think this should be amended.
Well, I think it provides a service not just to Howell's community, but to other surrounding communities. There are very few places like this where you can take your dog to train.
Okay.
And I think that people in hospitals or out of their normal element as a means of healing. We know that there have been studies done in which people have been in hospitals, and the doctors will tell you they heal faster, they get out of the hospital faster, and with less problems while they're in the hospital.
So it would be your testimony, if I may, that you believe the council should entertain an amendment to the proposed ordinance that would allow for dog training?
Correct.
Okay.
I do.
That's terrific.
And
That's
the
what we
reason
need
for
to hear.
explaining about the therapy dogs was that I didn't know how many of you knew what they really did and what the benefit was of them. And so I'm sorry if it was too long.
No, that's
but-
fine. And
Okay.
honestly, I did not mean to
No,
not
no,
allow you to
okay.
speak, but from a technical perspective, we have to be
I
very
understand.
focused on what
I
we're hearing.
understand.
We appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mrs. Smith, welcome. Come on up. We'll get, and everyone, I assure you, everyone will be heard. Mrs. Smith, and then the woman in the green shirt, you're next, and then Mrs. Dixell, and then you, ma'am, in the turquoise, and we'll get to everybody.
We're going to go.
We'll get to everybody. Good evening, Mrs. Smith. Your comments.
Pauline Smith, 54 Vanderveer Road. I would like to first state that
Mrs. Smith, 1 second. Folks, I would ask if you wouldn't mind. It sincerely is very difficult sometimes to hear the speaker if there's any audience discussion, and we certainly respect that, you want to make your points heard. If you could potentially refrain, if you need to have a conversation that's understandable, we would just ask that you go out into the foyer, please. Mrs. Smith, you have the floor.
I just wanted to say, firstly, I have no prior knowledge of this said case, just what I've heard here tonight. But as one of the people who has asked for several years that this ordinance be corrected, this is a correction to, as Mr. Howell said,
Mirror.
Compliance
mirror
with
is the
state
right
law.
word. Yeah, I was thinking of a different word, but it wouldn't come to me. But so that we would be, but because we felt that some of us in observance and on boards and different committees, that our ordinance, it weakened our ordinance not to mirror because we go around saying it's the State Right to Farm Act is our ordinance, but it isn't unless it has this stipulation. It's an exception. And we feel that's very important. But on hearing what I've heard tonight, I still would ask you please to adopt the correction. Whether or not training dogs would be a permitted use somewhere or a case before the zoning board has nothing to do with whether or not they're farm animals, agricultural animals. They are not. So please just adopt this ordinance and address this issue separately as it should be.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Dixell, you're next. I assure everyone, we will get to everyone. Mrs. Smith, and yes, the woman in the green, you just stood up before, you're next. I don't mean to point.
Good evening, council.
There's a lot of
Barbara
green out
Dixell, the
there.
Villages, on comment from this ordinance 0-07-22, land use, agricultural use. Definition. I am asking you to pass this ordinance as it is written. Mr. Vinoy, the zoning board, Mr. Meyer of the zoning board, very eloquently and very definitely came to this council in the beginning of the year and specifically requested that this council and this governing body and this township mirror the state law. We've had problems because we don't mirror the state law. Per the state, dogs are not agricultural animals. We're just asking you to mirror the state law. Just because the applicant and the owner of this kennel has had all kinds of, I guess...
Okay, hold on one second, folks. Everyone will be entitled to get their chance, and you can clarify for the record, but I'd like to...
Just because an applicant's had problems with the zoning board and litigation or whatever, and it's my opinion, sir, that, well, if I don't get it from one board, I'll get it from the next board. You know, it doesn't work that way. We have to abide by laws in this town.
So you're in favor of the
I
council
am in
adopting
favor.
it?
I would like you to pass this ordinance to mirror the state law, that dogs are not an agricultural use, and that we wind up not being in trouble because the zoning board very specifically said when they came here in the beginning of the year that they're having problems with, because one case after the other, because we don't mirror the state law.
Okay.
So why would we want to go against the state law and kick ourselves in the butt and make more problems for ourselves?
I think, Mrs. Dixell, you've amplified your comments, and
Thank you.
appreciate your position. Thank you very much. Mr. Nicastro, would you tap? Yes, ma'am. Yes. You just raised your hand, ma'am. Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Nicastro. Good evening. If you would just kindly please give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Cindy Sheldon. I live at 105 Sandra Place, Brick, New Jersey.
Welcome.
Let me tell you why it is agricultural. I live in Brick. As we all know, Brick is very overdeveloped. When I was looking for a training school, I specifically went to a school that was in a remote area, not with streetlights, not in a shopping center, not where there were other distractions, because I wanted to train dogs to work as therapy dogs. As a clinical social worker, I needed to know that that dog was the best trained dog. Kindred Souls has provided that in an agricultural setting. There are no distractions at the school. It allows for the dogs to concentrate and to learn what they need to then do when we go out of the agricultural setting.
Okay. So it's your-
Definitely.
your
My
statement is-
suggestion is that the ordinance be amended
Okay.
to include dogs, one, as agricultural, and two, that kenneling is very different than training.
Okay.
Kenneling means the owner is not present. It means that you are boarding that dog, you are feeding that dog. None of that happens at Kindred Souls. It is strictly a training school in which people come and leave. We are there for about an hour at a time during a class. We leave and we come back. The fact that there are trees surrounding the property, the dogs are safe. We are working with dogs off lead within the school so that if a dog does get loose, they can be. So it is definitely
So
agricultural.
your testimony, you think that dogs should be considered agricultural, and
Most
you'd like us to
definitely.
amend this to allow for dog training?
And dogs are agricultural. Dogs are 4-H animals. 4-H is agriculture. I work with 4-H. We train dogs to teach children animal husbandry, etc.
We appreciate your
Thank
comments.
you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. In the pink. Good evening. If you would just please give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Judy Schmidt. I live at 333 Oak Glen Road.
Hello, Mrs. Schmidt.
I'm a victim of the True Companion Dog Training Center, the Ivorone Madol case that we all are familiar with. I have an appeal into the State Superior Court, which goes in tomorrow, to have Judge Lair's decision overturned. I would like you to adopt this tonight. We need to put this in place. If I win this appeal, I have half a chance of keeping my property rural. I deal with him training this Jeff Madol every day. I have 3 horses, and it is a nightmare, 24/7. I can't have a barbecue. I can't sit on my porch. 10 o'clock at night, he's training. He's got lights on. 7 o'clock in the morning, his dogs are barking. All night long, his own dogs are barking. I don't get a break. I can't ride my horses, which is my hobby for 24 years since I've lived at 333 Oak Glen Road, because this was passed. So please adopt this tonight. I'm sorry?
You're saying because it's not compliant with state law?
Correct.
It's causing this issue?
Yeah, Judge Lair overturned, our board upheld that that dog training and dogs are not agricultural animals. And I think we need to adopt this tonight. Please do.
Thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. Yes, ma'am, in the white. Come on up. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Connie Schmidt-Kerman. I'm another victim of the Madol saga, the atrocity that was attached to what I'm hoping is the next installments that define the kennels and the regulations around kennels. And I'm urging you to adopt this. This is 4 years too late. I mean, you don't want to hold on this. And it breaks my heart because Pete runs a great business, but living next to this is hell. And you need to close up these loopholes, and based on the thing that was attached, that's going to be more installments, it needs not to be in any ARE zones. Can be in a commercial or another zone.
Okay. We appreciate your comments. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, may I
Go
ask
right-
a point?
Mrs. Dalton, go right ahead.
On that?
Please.
Am I correct that this ordinance, if we pass it as written tonight, won't affect any prior existing kennels which already exist, specifically the 2 that are in these published cases, correct or not? They don't go away if we do this tonight.
It would be up to another board to determine, or a land use officer to determine, if any use is a pre-existing non-conforming use. That's fortunately something the council doesn't have to do.
We don't have to do it, but I mean, am I going out on a limb here by saying that if the Chancery judge in Monmouth County already ruled on the issue, we're pretty much stuck?
Well, he ruled on an issue regarding the facts of that particular case, which I said were somewhat different from this. But he did rely, and he did rely on this particular, as the other party said, loophole, because back then, as our ordinance does right now, it still says dogs. It includes dogs. So that's what the judge was looking at back then, and now with the change, it would be up to if a person, for example, goes to the building department and says, I want a building permit, or I want to expand this facility, or something like that, I guess they would have a burden of showing that they're a pre-existing non-conforming use.
And
Go ahead, Mrs.
I don't know if Mr. Meyer maybe can answer this question. No, it's just, I know that in the report of the zoning board, when the recommendation was made to do this ordinance, we keep talking about the site,
the
the
specific
state
statute,
statute, and I really want, I don't have it at my fingertips. Can anybody give me the site, perhaps Mr. Giannetti, for the state statute that we are trying to mirror, so I can read it while we're doing this hearing?
I bet you Mr. Costigan has it in his wallet.
He knows it by heart.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really where it came from. The attorney.
I assume it's in Title IV, which is the agricultural statute, but if
It's in 2 parts. It's in the administrative code as well. The site, off the top of my head, for the Right to Farm Act, I believe, is 47:1A, maybe? Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, 50. I don't know off the top of my head, but there's a Right to Farm Act, and then there's a Farmland Assessment Act. And then the administrative code, which implements that.
to Google those topics, maybe it'll pop up. No, I've done that before. It may narrow. the
Why
search
we
if
would
you
like the
Google.
board to please pass this is, we are appealing this horrible thing that Judge Lair has landed on us. And this will prevent True Companion dog training from coming back and getting by with another variance.
Thank you very much for your comments. Mrs. Coakley, you're next. We'll get to everybody. Good evening, Mrs. Coakley.
Good evening again. Janet Coakley, Lakewood, Allenwood Road. I frankly had the pleasure of training a couple of dogs with my friend at the Kindred Souls Dog Training Facility. I will tell you they are excellent trainers, but that is irrelevant here. That is not the topic. This issue is not whether a particular facility is an excellent training facility. They do a good job. They train dogs for therapy. The issue here is whether we're in compliance with the state law, and we are not. And we need to bring ourselves into compliance with the law so that we don't have these issues constantly before us and constantly fighting them. It's definitely affecting the quality of life in some of our agricultural areas, and that is not an acceptable situation. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mrs. Coakley. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Niskevich, you're next.
Mayor, if I could ask Mr. Bongiovanni a question.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Bongiovanni, had we been, had our ordinance been the same as the state's ordinance, would Judge Lair have had the basis to overturn the zoning board's decision?
I don't think he would have.
Okay.
Good evening, ma'am. If you just give us your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Lynn Stippick. I live at 13 Arthur Avenue in Long Branch, New Jersey, but I benefit very much from Kindred Souls. Pete Campione and his business partners give me the ability to run my 4-H program out of their school free of charge. I would like to say that we need to amend this this ordinance to allow dog training rather than to completely ban it. I am very sympathetic to those folks that have just spoken, and I do not think that that the banning of dog training in its entirety is something that needs to be done. I think what needs to be done is to find those trainers who are not acting in a professional manner, and to make them comply to perhaps laws and ordinances that deal with the maybe perhaps time of training, etc. at night. I grew up in rural Pennsylvania. My sister and I were horse people, and we had cows surrounding us, sheep, etc., and the horses were our companion animals. In a society where we now live in very close quarters, where children's parents are divorced and they do not have the ability to go out and buy pieces of land and to have horses or other agricultural animals to teach them about life, dogs have become what we need in order to teach our young people how to care for another living being, how to create a bond that will go on, especially when they don't have the same bond that they should have with their parents or with their siblings, and give them what they need in order to realize that we are an entire society that needs to work together. I really do think that dog training, as a trainer myself, I've been a trainer. I've been in dogs for 24 years, and I breed dogs and I train them and I raise them. My dogs and anybody that I have trained would never let their dogs would never let their dogs bark for more than a few barks at a time. They wouldn't allow them to be out at 10 o'clock at night barking. They wouldn't interrupt anything that had to do with somebody enjoying their horseback riding, because we realize that that is another significant part of enjoying companion animals and of making a bond and a relationship with an animal.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Mrs. Niskevich, and then we'll get to you, sir. Good evening, Mrs. Niskevich.
Good evening. Elizabeth Niskevich, 150 Maxim Road. The guidelines for the dog kennel use is permitted as a conditional use, and the general requirements. This all goes in with the rest of the ordinance, right? I mean, this is included with the change in taking dogs out?
No, this is amending the agricultural, this is amending a definition in approved agricultural uses to strike dogs
Okay,
as being
so-
considered livestock.
The
Is that correct?
accompanying information, like the conditional use general requirements, is that another ordinance? Because it's not labeled with another number.
It is a separate ordinance. What we're focusing on very myopically is striking dogs as being considered livestock within the definition of our agricultural use definition.
Okay, so this other guidelines for dog kennel uses, general requirements and purpose, this will be discussed at a later time. The
That is correct.
comment, it's a separate ordinance.
Totally
because
separate.
we don't see an ordinance number on it, and it was advertised on the agenda, on the website, as coming up tonight. So is it coming up after this?
Yeah, Mr. Chinesky, was that advertised?
No, not to my knowledge, Mayor. What was advertised was the definition.
I think what the township may have done is posted on the website additional explanatory information on the separate issue that you're talking about, because we've been publishing, since the website has been up, anytime we workshop or discuss a topic, we put the body of information out there. But I don't believe we're in a position to begin even debating the topic that you're talking about.
This
That's a
will come
separate,
later,
distinct issue.
and I will get to address the
The specifics.
No question.
general requirements.
By virtue of the statute, if we were to amend this piece that you're speaking to, there'd be a separate hearing.
Okay.
It would start off with a workshop of the issue, and then it could move into adoption of an ordinance.
Okay.
At which point there'd be a hearing.
I think that the subject that you're discussing tonight, then, I really think it needs to be addressed, because we do have a problem. I agree that Kindred Souls runs a fantastic operation. I'm just concerned about the overnight kenneling and the impact that it makes, and I know he doesn't do that, because I tried to get my dog to stay overnight there, and he absolutely wouldn't hear of it. But I still feel that the subject needs to be addressed. We have to bring the ordinance, up to snuff.
Okay.
And you will hear from me when we get to discuss the general requirements.
Terrific. Thank you. Yes, sir. Okay. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Just give us your name and address, please, for the record.
My name is Pete Campione. I live at 75 Brown Road. I would be Kindred Souls. Now, I would like to discuss this issue from a scientific and biological, so we can understand why the first judge ruled as she did and the second judge ruled as she did. The first judge ruled as she did in comparing dogs and in stating dogs were now agricultural, in equating them to the horse. I would like to know, out of anyone of the respected gentlemen and ladies here, who can tell me how many times they have driven through Howell and seen a horse pulling a plow and doing agricultural work. How many people have driven through Howell and seeing a farmer milk a cow? The face of agricultural is changing, and that's what this judge said. And she said specifically, which everyone seems to be leaving out, she said specifically, and no, I'm not wrong.
Folks.
She said specifically, if you allow the horse, you must allow the dog.
So
and everyone seems to back away from that little piece and focus on the pieces that fit the interpretation. If I were to give everyone in this room a copy of John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men and say, please come back here in a week and tell me what you got from that book, I guarantee you'd have 110 different interpretations. And now we are trying to take one woman's and one man's statements, written statements, and we are trying to interpret them. And unfortunately, all I'm hearing is interpretations that are outside the box of science, outside the box of biology, outside the box of facts. It's what we want. Well, no. Horses are companion animals. Most so-called farm animals are now companion animals.
I just have to stop you for 1 second because I have to, it's my obligation, if you will, to protect the integrity of the record in the hearing. This council has no interest in any decision that a judge has made relative to your property, or quite frankly, with all due respect to everyone else that may or may not have an interest in some judge's determination. Our focus, and let me just read this into the record. Hold on 1 second. Our focus, very specifically, is to consider a recommendation that has been presented to us to amend the definition of agricultural uses to strike dogs from livestock. If a judge has given in some different ruling, some interpretation, some decision, whatever the case may be, that's wonderful. It has no impact, nor is it the role of this council to consider such ruling that a judge may or may not have given. We
Then,
are,
sir,
hold
can
on, I just have to beg for your indulgence because I have to protect the integrity of the hearing, is not to complicate what we are considering by way of evidence. We are only making a determination on whether or not we will agree to amend the agricultural use definition to strike dogs as livestock. And I sincerely appreciate everyone's concern and emotion on how it may impact a particular situation in a judge's ruling, but we, under no condition, can in any way, shape, or form consider any other hearing or any other judiciary's review of this matter. We have to hear from the public whether or not people believe, in their opinion, that we should include or not include dogs. And you are certainly welcome to entertain or to suggest to us evidence as to why you think dogs should remain in the definition.
Okay.
And that would be testimony that we would be more than happy to hear, but we cannot consider a judge's ruling and how we should interpret.
Strike all, Judge.
And I don't mean to be disrespectful at all, but I just have to protect the integrity of the record.
Fine. Strike all reference to judges. Now let's get back to the fact of the question that I asked you before of how many of you have seen horses pulling plows in Howell. I don't care what the judge said.
Hold on 1 second, and let me answer your I know everybody wants to be recognized, and we're going to get to everybody. Let me... Oh, I'm sorry. You're raising your hand because you've seen them. I apologize. I think everybody wants to get up and speak. Okay. Let me give you a technical description. In Howell Township, there are many people who are qualified as farmers or for operating farms because they raise or train horses. They don't necessarily have to be pulling a plow for them to be considered a component of sort of farmland, if you will. There are people whose occupation is to raise and breed horses, and the state law is clear that that is permissible. Now, we can't comment on why the state and their law has not included dogs in that determination. And that may be a decision for the legislature to have to deal with. But just because a horse may not be pulling a plow, if you will, which is a fine observation on your part, does not mean that they don't still qualify under the agricultural definition. And in fact, what I would suggest to you is we have more horse farms than we do farms that grow agricultural product, if you will.
Your Honor, respectfully, I think you just answered my question, and if I remember your statement correctly, and from what I understand it's being recorded, you just stated that the Township of Howell allows for the training of companion animals.
Horses.
Companion animals. You said it.
We're not going to get
They
into the
are
minutia of...
companion animals. And the face is changing. And we cannot go on, and if Howell refuses to change with the times, then it's going to get worse. And there are going to be people like, there are always going to be rotten trainers. There are always going to be bad apples. But what you're doing is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. One bad one, let's get rid of them all, which leaves Howell with nothing. But You cannot get away now where there is a horse training facility or horse training facilities all over Howell, training companion horses for little girls to put on their riding jumpers and ride, and then say no to dogs.
Let me be very specific. The state has determined that horses qualify under the agricultural definition. Whether we agree or not,
I'm
that has
asking
been
you to
decided.
agree. I guess that's what this is boiling down to, is I'm asking you to see the logic in the science and the biology of what constitutes agricultural and companion. And if you're fitting one in one category, you would fit the second in that same category.
If I was to summarize your testimony, which we need to be considerate
That's
of,
fine.
your position is you do not believe that dogs should be struck as livestock. You believe that dogs should remain eligible under the definition of our agricultural use ordinance.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And we appreciate all your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Yes, ma'am. Come on up. Who else would still like to be recognized? Okay, we'll get to you. Chivalry is not yet dead. We'll recognize this young lady first. Good evening, ma'am. If you just please give us your name and address.
My name is Betty Cozzolino, and I live at 41 Spring Hill Drive in Howell. I've been living here for 22 years. And I originally lived in Long Branch, but because it's such a little cement city and there's no place to train dogs, I came here because it was a animal-friendly township. At least that was 20 years ago. As far as what these people have been saying, I think they need to focus on, this is a training facility with no kennel. That, what they're talking about are kennels. And dogs do not belong in like, in your shopping centers behind Applebee's, because it causes problems with traffic if one should get loose. Back at Kindred Souls, you're back in a farm-like setting. And sitting here, I was just thinking, horses they're agricultural, so they give back to society, kind of, like with the manure and how they grow mushrooms and stuff, okay? Right? Because I am a farm, I used to work with the
I'll let you
horses.
stretch there.
No, it's not a stretch. The horses, the cows that these people see, people milking, although I've never seen it, doesn't it give back to the society? And the goats that sometimes people that breed dogs, they get their goat's milk from? Well, the dogs that they train over at Kindred Souls gives back to society. So why couldn't that not be categorized as an agricultural thing? It's giving back to, agriculturally, in a setting, it's giving back to the people and the public, no? Okay, but I'm going to get back to what you're going to say right now. I feel that it should be changed to include dogs as agricultural since they give back to society.
All right, so your comment is you would like the council to include and not strike dogs as qualifying under the agriculture use definition?
Right, because the dogs bring, I've lived here for 20 years and I've seen nothing but these people's horse farms, if given the right price, they will sell their land. Okay, so I've seen a lot of horse farms go by the wayside because people are selling off to developments.
All right, well, just for the record, we appreciate your opinion. Our focus is on
Right, but I'm trying to make
the
a point
earlier issue.
here.
And
My
your-
point is that people from Long Branch, people from all over that are little cement cities now because they have no place, just like in New York City where they train horses in old buildings. What we're doing here is we're opening up a farm area and we're making a training facility. It's not a kennel.
Your comments are appreciated and welcomed.
Okay,
Thank
so am I excused?
Unless you have anything else you'd like to add. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Smith, you're next, sir. Come on up. Folks, let me just make one thing clear. Everybody's opinion is welcome, and everybody's opinion counts. And just because someone may disagree with someone else's opinion doesn't make them wrong And there's no reason for any sort of back and forth in the audience. We're all on the same side. We need to hear everybody's comments, and everybody's opinion is valued. And when all is said and done, the council will listen to all of that and then make a decision. So I just ask everybody, let's keep a happy face and let's try and all get along. Mr. Smith, welcome, sir.
Okay, Don Smith, 54 Vanderveer Road. I also serve as vice chairman on the Environmental Commission for 14 years now. We discussed this at a couple commission meetings. The council has been approached for a little over 3 years now to correct this, what we consider a mistake, by the zoning board, and a few other people have asked that the issue be addressed. So it's not something that's just happened overnight. But the issue is, and we have to remember the word livestock. I would agree that dogs have an agricultural use. They're sheep herders, but not livestock. I've been racking my mind trying to think of any other, what I would consider livestock that's a carnivore, and I can't think of one. The state does not recognize dogs as livestock, and our ordinance is mirroring the state's right to farm ordinance. Perhaps these people should approach the state and ask them to change the right to farm law, and then we might consider changing the township's right to farm to mirror the state's plan. I do greatly resent the fact that a zoning board case was being tried right before this governing body, to the point that at one time the attorney addressed you as the board. I find that very distasteful and completely out of order. This has nothing to do with the zoning board case. You have been asked for years to address this issue. You're doing it. You're mirroring the state with the term livestock. If the people want a change in land use, then I think another ordinance would have to be crafted by the planning board to create perhaps a conditional use for these training centers. But that is not a part of the right to farm ordinance. Okay. And just, let's keep it simple. It's just a matter of changing the word for the livestock and deleting the dogs from livestock. And believe me, if the state doesn't think they're livestock, what makes us think they are? Okay, that's all I have.
Thanks for your comments, Mr. Smith. Mr. Meyer, come up, sir. Welcome. Who else would still like to be heard on this? Just a show of hands. Yes, sir. Mr. Costigan. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Meyer.
Good evening. Stephen Meyer, Adelphia Road, Vice Chair, Board of Adjustment. In regards to this ordinance, if it does not completely mirror the state's ordinance, then you're wasting your time even hearing it. If it does not mirror the state's ordinance, we don't stand up in court with decisions. As far as amending this ordinance to allow training, the place for that is in the kennel ordinance, which I believe you're considering at this point. And that becomes the council decision. Once you decide where you want the dog uses, what type of dog uses you want, and you pass that ordinance, all we as the board do is then we make our decisions according to that. We right now have very little guidelines to work with, which is why we've been pressing for these two ordinance changes, or one ordinance change and one ordinance, to give us the guidelines of how we are supposed to handle these dog use cases. Rather than trying to handle each one individually and try and come up with some consistency, and when we fail, we end up in court. Some we win, some we lose. With the ordinances in place, we then have decisions which will stand, which are fair to everyone. But the decision as to where you want the uses and what's allowed and not allowed in there is your decision, and should be handled in that kennel ordinance and not in the right to farm ordinance. Because if you do not mirror the state ordinance, it won't stand up. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Mr.
Baker?
Moore. Go right ahead, Mr. Moore.
You brought up something that Mr. Van Noyes and yourself came before us about 4 or 5 months ago.
Yes.
With some suggestions. Were they ever put in writing to the manager's office?
Yes, they were.
They were in the zoning board's annual report. They were codified.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Yes, sir, in the yellow shirt. You're okay? Anyone else who'd like to be heard? Yes, ma'am. Anyone else after this young lady that would like to be heard? Mr. Costigan? Okay.
I'm a novice at this, I just have a question.
Take your time, we just need you to give us your name and address.
Maureen Kelleher from Toms River.
Okay. Good evening, Ms. Kelly.
I've been with Kindred Souls for 3 years, therapy dog, the whole bit. But my
Okay.
question is, if you take the dog out of the Livestock Act, does that mean there's no dog training in Howell? What happens when that happens? You know, if you take it out, what happens after that?
Mr. Bongiovanni, would you,
Ideally, every commercial use that is not a inherently illegal use, ideally, every zoning ordinance of every town should include an area where such uses could be permitted. That's ideal. But each town is limited by space, by natural resources, etc. And so I do think, in this particular, my own opinion, for that matters, in this town, there is enough room for a area that could be zoned specifically to permit this as a permitted use under some circumstances or conditional use. But I think the problem with it right now is the way the ordinance is anywhere in the ARE zones, which it makes up a tremendous amount of land in Howell Township. The land mass is tremendous. And unless there's a change in this ordinance, you could have dozens and dozens of these uses, which I think some people believe can be nuisances. So, and aside from that, the reasons that everybody spoke of tonight, they are trying to, the rationale for having this this definition of agricultural use, it's multifaceted. There's the definition is also in the tax laws, because only certain kinds of agricultural uses meet the criterion so that you can get the tax exemption. So that's what our ARE zone is trying to mirror. So since the state law doesn't seem to recognize dogs in the same light as other livestock, it makes sense to amend the law.
does that answer your question?
Yes, it
Okay,
does.
great.
It does.
Thank you very much. Mr. Costigan? Is there anyone else after Mr. Costigan who'd like to make any comments for or against the adoption of this ordinance? Okay, we'll ask that one more time. Good evening, Mr. Costigan. You'd like to be recognized? Okay. Yes, Mr. Costigan.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. John Costigan, 214 Birdsall Road, Howell. I've been listening to I wasn't even going to get up tonight. I just figured it was going to go through.
Any chance we can convince you to go sit back down?
No.
No, I'm kidding.
And actually, one of the reasons I wasn't going to get up, I didn't want to say me too. But you know, in 2000, when the Geese Police came before the zoning board and had to go on to the Judge Perry, one of the county councils that's very active in the agriculture, that's what he does as a counselor, said that he felt that her decision was wrong. And that's what he said. So I happen to agree with him. Part of the reason probably is because this township's ordinance never mirrored the state ordinance, but it was just on that little, except that livestock shall not include dogs. Now, Mr. Meyer, I can't even remember who, someone talked, Mr. Smith talked about carnivorous. Dogs are carnivorous. Livestock are vegetative animals. Most of them are ruminants. Horses aren't ruminants. But they're all agricultural use. Horses, there's more horses in Monmouth County than any other county in the state. They contribute a lot to the income of the state. In the hay fields that the hay fields that have to be seeded to provide food for these horses throughout the state, it's an important part of the agricultural experience. Mr. Genetti spoke about amending the ordinance to have kennels and training separately. My opinion is that the training is a more intense use of dogs or carnivorous animals. If you look at the tax code in New Jersey, I don't pay sales tax for horse food, sheep food, hay, goat food. I do pay sales tax for dog food and cat food for that matter. And that's because the state code recognizes that dogs are not agricultural animals. When you, I'll wait till they get done.
Go ahead, Mr.
I just, it's a whole different set of circumstances. And I was lobbying before the zoning board, because I go to all of their meetings, on all these kennel cases that come up and the dog cases that come up, to say, what about mirroring this statute? It's also, by the way, in the Administrative Code of the Department of Agriculture, same thing.
So your comment is you're
My
in favor...
comment is, dogs are not agricultural animals, and the judges that decided they were had no business doing so, in my opinion.
Okay.
The gentleman from the kennel owner talked about biology, and that horses are companion animals. Race horses, standard-bred horses, horses have historically been agricultural animals. I have sheep, I have goats, I have horses. There are statutes, by the way, not on a different part of the state statutes, that dogs caught worrying or chasing sheep are to be shot. Did you know that? That's in the state statutes right now, believe it or not. And it's because you can, by worrying sheep, you can actually cause them to have a heart attack, where they just die. It's just the way it is. Mrs. Schmidt was talking about her problems on Oak Glen Road. That's a big problem, because she can't use the field, two paddocks there that are adjacent to the horse training facility or the kenneling. That's a horse training facility too, because the dogs, I think on more than one occasion, have chased the horses and worried them and scared them. And it's very difficult to ride a horse when the horse is scared and wants to get rid of you. Some of the other things, I heard one lady talk about the dog off the lead, or if a dog gets loose in a shopping center. You know what? If a dog gets loose in a farm area, you could have cattle that are maimed, and it's been known to happen. Even in Middletown, probably 3 or 4 years ago in Middletown, there are very few farms in Middletown. When little dogs from a house, you get 2 or 3 together, they get a pack mentality. They've come in on a person that I know up there. They ripped the bellies out of all the sheep that were there. The next morning they get up, they could hear the sheep wailing, stuff like that. That's what they do. It's in their instinct. And so when you train a dog, but they have certain instincts. Now I'll get done.
We appreciate your
Okay,
comments.
thank you very much. Oh, one last thing. I made an observation. Virtually the vast preponderance of people that spoke in favor of mirroring the state agricultural language are citizens of this township. And that's not to be said for those that are against it. They're from Long Branch, Brick, and every place else, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Costigan. Ma'am, you'd like to be recognized, please come on up. Good evening. Please give us your name and address, please, for the
Mayor and
record.
Council. My name is June Noto. I live at 75 Brown Road in Howell, New Jersey, and I am also one of the principals of Kindred Souls. I will have a less impassioned testimony today. But I do want the council to understand we are talking about people's livelihoods here, which is why we're here, okay? And then therefore, we're talking about putting businesses out of business. We are members of the Howell Township Chamber of Commerce. We definitely contribute to the community, and I'm only here to talk about why I think dogs are agricultural, since that's all we're really supposed to discuss
right
today.
ahead.
The reason I came to Howell 10 years ago was a headline in the Asbury Park Press that said, 2 pit bulls attacked horse. And the horse had to be put down, and so did the dogs. It was clear that 10 years ago, Howell had absolutely no provisions whatsoever for providing a good area for dogs to be trained. The gentleman that just spoke, that talked about how dogs chase and it's instinctual to kill, he doesn't know what he's talking about. That's not what the nature of dog is, and we could talk about that and bring professional testimony on that. But he makes my case in saying that dogs do need to be trained. If I brought my facility to where Petco is, and I would love to have a commercial facility, there is no one in this room that would be able to afford what I would have to charge in order to have these dogs trained. And that's the point of having a home-based business in an agricultural zone, because I can afford to keep my costs down. I can afford to only charge a certain small amount of money. Otherwise, I would be charging an addition of $500 or more per citizen, whether they're in this town or another town. I do happen to know that we do bring a lot of business to the town of Howell. We also bring a lot of positive press. I don't know if any of you have read about us in the newspaper, but every time that there's an article, it's positive press for Howell. And I'm saying basically that if you can't have a dog in a strip mall for the same reason that we talked, the gentleman made his case about if a dog gets loose, they're going to rip the belly out of a sheep. What if a dog gets loose at the Petco and it winds up killing a child? I think that's far more serious than a goat or an animal being killed by an untrained dog. People bring dogs for training because they need to be trained. That's the whole purpose of dog training. Otherwise, we have irresponsible dog owners who have dogs that are very typically out of control in a public, non-safe environment. And that's why in an agricultural zone, it's open air. We also have programs that we offer at Kindred Souls that require an outdoor setting. You cannot do that in a commercial environment. You can't do it in a warehouse environment. So I respect the board, and I expect, we were just talking about here about Mr. Bongiovanni mentioned that there really isn't a place in the township of Howell for this type of business. So I'm basically saying I believe it's agricultural. I understand the reason why the state changed the law for the Right to Farm Act, why they also attached a certain amount of acreage in the Right to Farm Act, that I'm in an ARE2 zone, but I do not have a right to farm. Yet I am in an agriculturally zoned area. So my right to farm doesn't exist because I don't have enough property. But I do have enough property to run an animal-centric business. And that is the nature of my business. It deals with animals. I also had chickens and geese. I ran a farm at this property. That doesn't mean that there's some sort of contradiction between my dogs and the dogs we train are in violation or harmful to other animals. I am sorry for the people that are burdened by the catastrophe of Jeff Madoli. I understand that, and I'm very, very sorry to hear that, again, a bad apple is going to ruin it for everybody. I came before the zoning board 10 years ago to make my case. I was prejudiced against. And that's on the record, and the fact of the matter is that I believe I met the burden of proof, and at that time, there was a vote of 4-3, and it was only up to the chairperson, Thomas Gilmet, at the time, who said if we changed some of the nature of our application, that he would consider it, and he denied it in spite of the fact that he said he would. We have been law-abiding, tax-paying citizens in this town. We're just trying to do the right thing. So I'm asking that you deny it, the change of ordinance, or at minimum, at least request to at least put training in there for dogs. And I would also request that the board acknowledge that based on the current definition of the ordinance, that dogs are included. We've heard a few people here say that they are, which is the specific reason why you need to exclude it. You want to come into line with state law. I would like to be recognized as a pre-existing non-conforming use. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Okay. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to be heard? Okay, yes, ma'am. As you approach, just reference to the council, we need to have a motion to extend our meeting time beyond 11 p.m. We still have a considerable amount of business that does need to be acted upon this evening that I do not believe can be further delayed or tabled. So I'd ask a member of the council to make a motion to proceed until approximately 11:45, and we can revisit at that time.
So moved.
We have a motion. We need a second.
Second, Mayor.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, please proceed.
I'm going to try to make this very short. My name is Judy Luce, and I am I live in Howell. I live on 201 Georgia Tavern Road.
Welcome, Ms. Lewis.
And I have attended Kindred Souls, and I've been there, and they are a wonderful facility. All I wanted to say is that I agreed with what the last speaker said. And I think one of the important things is that something needs to be, either we keep dogs in the ordinance, or we allow them to continue business with the exception, as they stated. Not having a training facility is really detrimental. There are other townships that are very supportive because they've seen what it did for their township and their residents. And these people are providing it for Howell, and I would like to see it continue. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard for or against this particular ordinance? Anyone else who would like to be heard? Okay, before I close the public portion, I'm going to ask for the council's position in entertaining gentleman attorney's request for us to carry the public hearing beyond this evening to afford his client's planner an opportunity to submit additional testimony beyond what has been heard this evening. So I'd like to ask for the council's indulgence. Is it the interest of the council to extend the public hearing, which would require us not to take action, and to motion to carry this until the next meeting? Mr. Walsh, you're welcome to go first, sir.
Have we, has the attorney known about it for a long period of time, that the meeting was tonight?
Well, hold on.
I just want to ask a question.
Hold on one second. Let me attempt to answer it, and Mr. Bongiovanni can comment. With respect to this attorney or anyone else, and stop me, Mr. Bongiovanni, please, if this is incorrect. We had an obligation pursuant, in fact, to the commentary that I read this very evening, that the ordinance was introduced on June 12th. It was published according to law. There is a public hearing that was advertised for this evening. It was published in the Asbury Park Press's edition of June the 15th. A copy was posted here in the municipal building. Copies were available on our website and also to the members of the public. So have we, to the Deputy Mayor's question, have we appropriately satisfied our requirement to make this known to the community, if you will, or any interested party in a manner that is consistent with the law?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that answers I believe that would answer your question.
Good enough for me, thank you.
All right, so the question for the council to entertain with respect to this gentleman attorney's request is that we would extend the hearing. Is there a motion to either extend the hearing? And let me ask it this way. Is there a motion to carry the hearing beyond this evening? Is there a motion? All right, there is no motion to extend the hearing beyond this evening. So that's the first procedural question. I'm going to officially close the public portion of this hearing. At this time, it is appropriate for the council to deliberate on this matter, and there's a couple things, again, that I want to reiterate to protect the integrity of the hearing. The first is any comments that were entered into the record with respect to a particular property or a particular lawsuit or a particular judge's decision have no bearing on what we're hearing tonight. And I've attempted as best I can, without being disrespectful to anyone who wanted to be heard, to kind of let that be known that those comments don't impact, in my judgment, what we were here this evening to focus on. This ordinance has nothing to do with any individual property owner, any individual concerns, and believe me, I'm certain I speak for the council. We are sympathetic to the fact that there are many sides to this issue. What we have been asked to consider is whether or not we believe we should adopt an ordinance that takes our local ordinance into compliance with the state statute and the state's definition of approved agricultural use. That is a very myopic view for us. We have to decide, do we want to be in compliance with state law, or do we want to continue to allow the ordinance to exist as is? Ms. Mangiovanni, is there anything else that we need to take into consideration with respect to our acting or not acting on this matter?
I think that the council can take into account that there may be a lot of uses like this out there, and that could be a legitimate reason for tightening up the ordinance because of uncontrolled commercial uses like this, which are somewhat inconsistent with the intent of the ARE2 zone. I think that's partly what's being aimed at.
Okay. So we can certainly take into consideration, for example, the commentary and the recommendations of the zoning board in their annual report, where they specifically asked that we adopt an ordinance that amends what we have on the books to mirror the state, for example. Is that correct?
I believe they did complain in that report about how they are getting a lot of cases because of the ordinance.
Okay.
A lot of cases that are maybe inappropriate.
All right, so at this point in time, I'd like to ask a member of the council, why don't we first, we can certainly make the motion and have a second and have discussion, and that might be the appropriate way from a parliamentary procedure in terms of how we want to act on that. So is there a motion to adopt this ordinance?
So moved, man.
And in fact, Mr. Howell, if you wouldn't mind, just procedurally, if you would proceed
my
with the...
sheet,
I
man.
did. My book didn't have the sheet. I'm sorry. Go right ahead, sir.
Motion that ordinance number 0-07-22 be finally passed and adopted, and that notice of its passage and adoption be published in the July 20th, 2007 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
All right, we have a motion. We need a second.
Second, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. Under remarks, just for the sake of brevity, perhaps we can just go right down the line, and members of the council can submit their opinion, if you will, on this particular matter. Ms. Dalton, we'll start with you.
When we talk, and first I have maybe some questions.
Go,
'cause I
please.
wanna
Floor is
talk
yours.
about it. When we talk about this, we're talking about the tax code. We're talking about NJSA 544-23.3, which has to do with tax exemption for agricultural use.
And also, Mr. Costigan, I believe the attorney for the Kindred Care Souls also agreed that it's also found in the NJAOC, New Jersey Administrative NJAC, New Jersey Administrative Code, probably in definitions regarding agricultural use.
Have we exhausted all of the definitions of domestic animal or livestock contained throughout the New Jersey statutes?
Well, you mean in the proposed ordinance?
Yeah.
Well, probably not, but I don't think the state did that either. You know, I think the state was trying to mirror a certain type of agricultural use that deserves to be defended from overtaxation.
Right.
And when you're designing an agricultural zone, like the Area 2, 1, 2, 3, and 6 zones, they do take into account the number of agricultural uses that meet the qualified tax criterion.
Am I wrong that the tax criteria includes a minimum of 5 acres?
5 plus, I believe, that's right, 5 acres, and if you have a home, it could be 1 acre plus the other 5.
And our ordinance and the state statute in this tax section has to do, for example, says that bees are not included, but I know in other towns, bees are, in some towns where there aren't too many farms. I'm not?
Okay. What I would say, Yeah, the hearing, unfortunately, Mr. Costigan, no, that's quite all right. You're well respected in these chambers, but procedurally, the public portion is closed. We're not entertaining any additional comments from the public. Go ahead, Mrs. Dalton, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think there is a semicolon after the word dog, so they're talking about amending the portion that talks about training any or all of those animals which are previously named as beef cattle, sheep, swine, etc.
Okay.
Horses, ponies.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
So it says that livestock shall not be, dogs shall not be considered livestock. Okay. It doesn't talk about dogs
Doesn't say
not
they're
being animals
animals
useful
or-
to man.
Absolutely not. Does not say anything.
I
like
am extremely concerned that the way this ordinance is proposed, it reads, "Land which is devoted to the production for sale of plants and animals useful to man, including but not limited to," and it goes on. As I read this ordinance, I am concerned that though we are trying to take out dogs by adding the word livestock shall not include dogs to mirror the Tax Act for agricultural use, that we are still opening it up to the sale of animals useful to man. And are we creating a hole which is basically swallowing the exception? That we can wind up with breeders being an agricultural use here by the terms of this.
Breeders of dogs?
Yeah.
No, I for one thing, we'd have the same problem that we had before because this ordinance already exists. It just says that dogs are livestock. So
No.
it's already, the only change is just removing it from, so if we had that breeding issue now, we had it before.
Well, what's the difference between livestock and animals useful to man? Why do we need both of those sets of language then?
I think you have to read it very carefully. It says, it defines certain animals and what they do, and it says, agricultural use regarding livestock, including beef, cattle, sheep, swine, horses, ponies, mules or goats, including the breeding, boarding, raising, rehabilitating, training, and grazing or any of such animals. So if we're talking about other kinds of animals, they might be useful for other things other than, raising, rehabilitating, grazing, breeding. Cats, for example, they're house pets for the most part. That's not saying anything, that they're not useful to man. This ordinance is not opening up the township to the idea that somehow the ARE zones permit places for cats to be bred. But I do think that the dog kennel ordinance that is pending is designed to also tighten up that issue, because there are a lot of dog kennels, I believe, in Howell Township that are going unregulated because there's really no zone that set forth any criteria for them.
Well, my last comment would be that if we are trying to make this language mirror the identical language of the statute 54-423.3 as written and proposed here, it does not. There is a whole host of language left off, and I'm not sure where we stand with Christmas tree farms and tree and forest products. So I would like to see that looked at. Between the word training.
But we're only talking about the portion of the statute that deals with land which is devoted for the production or sale of plants and animals.
Following the words federal government, there are additional words in that very paragraph, except that land which is devoted exclusively to the production for sale. I'm just saying, if the whole purpose of this is that we want to be identical with the state statute, then let's be identical with the state statute. Let's copy the paragraph the way the paragraph reads in the statute. And I'm not suggesting, as Mr. Bongiovanni, I understand you are not the drafter of this particular ordinance. So it's meant to be no criticism to you in particular or anyone else. But what I am saying is, if we are up here saying that we are trying to mirror the language of the state statute, then we need to mirror the language of the state statute. There's a word in here, and, it should be or, and I've only had a chance to actually look at the state statute tonight. So I would like to be able to look at it in more depth. But all I'm saying is, if that's the purpose of what we're doing, to be in conformity with the state statute, then we need to really be in conformity with the state statute, and this is not.
Okay, any other comments, Mrs. Dalton?
No.
Okay, Mr. Howell, any comments, sir, on this? Comments or remarks?
Mayor, I think we've been sitting here for over an hour trying to determine if the word livestock should include dogs or not include dogs. I've gone through, in the last half an hour, 30 different websites, and not one of them lists a dog under livestock. This is the last one I just looked at. It's the website is uslegaldefinitions.com. Livestock is usually defined to refer to horses, mares, mules, jacks, jennies, colts, cows, calves, yearlings, bulls, oxen, sheep, goats, lambs, kids, hogs, shoats, whatever a shoat is, and pigs. There is another thing that lists livestock guarding dogs. So you wouldn't have livestock guarding livestock. So.
Okay. So your comment is?
According to everything I've read, nobody considers dogs livestock.
Okay. Terrific. Any other comments?
No, sir.
Mr. Walsh, any comments or remarks, sir?
I'm not up here trying to determine whether or not you run a good business. In no way is this any reflection on the type of business you run, or the quality that it has been an asset to some people. And I give a lot of people credit for coming here tonight and speaking on the quality of what you do. But I don't believe that that's what I'm up here to decide tonight. It's been a little bit of a struggle being told by the zoning board and the planning board and people that sometimes our ordinances have not been consistent with state statutes and laws, and that's an issue. It's an issue that's cost this township a lot of time, aggravation, and money. And I agree with the mayor when he said to you, I don't know why you're not the state telling them to add dogs to livestock. I mean, I'm being asked a pretty simple thing tonight. And heard a lot of nice things from a lot of people. But really, to me, this is pretty basic. It could have been summed up in 20 seconds. And not that I didn't listen to everything that was said from everybody. But it's a decision that I can make in 20 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. My perspective on this is that we were asked to make a determination of whether or not we wanted to comply with the state's law. And the state, according to state statute and regulation, is they do not consider dogs to qualify as livestock. And we have taken every effort, at least in the nearly 5 years that I have been as a member of the governing body, to comply with the state laws when it suggests there's a best practice, and to avoid any ambiguity where we might not be compliant, we could have a loophole that creates problems for residents and businesses. In my view, we're being asked to bring up or to make this local ordinance compliant with state law. The state does not consider dogs to be livestock. And as a result, I'm compelled to want this municipality to be compliant with what the state's law requires. Having said that, the issue of training dogs, in my judgment, can be best dealt with in the ordinance that we will at a later date consider with respect to kennels. And I'm not suggesting that training dogs is a kennel issue, but it is probably more appropriate from a legislative perspective to deal with issues that have similarity within laws that apply to it. So in my view, I think that there can be an accommodation, if you will, at the right time, where we can deal with the issue of making certain that certain businesses that train dogs are allowed to do so, and that it be regulated, and that it be monitored, and that it be overseen in a way that has a law that deals with that kind of business. That's a separate issue from what we're talking about tonight. And so I don't think that we're consciously regulating out a certain kind of business, a certain kind of practice. What we're looking at here tonight is becoming compliant with the state law. And so I'm compelled, based on the testimony that has been submitted and having listened to everyone, that I have to go along with what the state suggests is the definition of livestock. Dogs does not fall within that. And that at a later date, the council will hear different and new testimony from members of the public about how to effectively deal with the management of dog training, which is a totally separate issue as opposed to whether dogs are livestock. And so, in the event that a member of the council makes a motion to approve this ordinance, absent any additional modifications, I am in favor of adopting this ordinance, provided that in very short order, we have more public comment and testimony about dealing with the issue of dog training. And so at that point, if there's any other comments from the council? Mrs. Dalton, are you of the mind that you'd like to introduce any amendments at this point in time based on your previous comments?
I don't think that we could, I mean, there's two sentences that are left off of that paragraph. I mean, I would want to be able to prepare it in the right context,
Okay.
and I think rushing through it at 11:30 is not the right thing to do.
So we may, in addition, revisit this to make further corrections.
It could always be amended.
Okay, so it can be amended. All right.
Well,
so-
then the only one I would offer then is that where it says training and grazing in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th or 6th line, the word "and" should be "or," because otherwise, someone would have to satisfy all those conditions in order to qualify.
All right, Mr. Bongiovanni, clearly the litmus test is that if this is a very significant alteration, we would have to re-advertise. In your judgment, does the change of the word "and" to "or"?
I guess it was a little mistake.
All right, so this does not substantively change the intent. So in your view, we could make that correction without having to re-advertise and rehear.
This is like a type of graphical error.
Okay. Okay. So with that having been said, Ms. Dalton, would you amend your motion? Because did you? Who? I'm sorry.
made the
Who?
motion.
Okay. Mr. Howell, would you amend your motion for adoption with the grammatical or administrative change "and" to "or" in the 6th line?
That would be between, where.
Training and grazing.
To say
training or
training or grazing?
That, I believe, is what Mrs. Dalton would like us to entertain.
Absolutely, Mayor, I'd like to amend my motion.
All right. Will the seconder agree?
Second.
Okay, so we have an agreement with respect to an amendment that does not substantively change the ordinance. We have had a motion and a second. Are there any additional comments or remarks from the council? Hearing none, roll call, please, Ms. Woolman.
Mayor, I just wanted to read into the record the official title of the ordinance.
I'm sorry, I
That's
apologize,
okay.
we get so off track.
And then we'll take the roll call.
Go right
An
ahead.
ordinance amending Section 188-4 of Chapter 188 entitled Land Use of the Code of the Township of Howell, New Jersey to revise and amend the definition of agricultural use. Roll call, Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay. All right, I'm going to ask for the council, do you want to take a 2-minute break?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to take a 2-minute recess or a 3-minute recess.
The ordinance review committee.
I'm going to reconvene the meeting back to order. I'd like to ask for the council's indulgence for a moment if we could.
Excuse me?
I'd like to ask for the council's indulgence to skip to Article 8A4. This is amending, or a potential amendment, to the Housing Code, the Section to amend the Enforcement Authority and the venue for hearings on violations of the code. We have a representative from our Code Enforcement Division, Mrs. Hoover, if you'd like to come on up. We may or may not have technical questions for you. We certainly appreciate your staying with us this late into the evening. And this was introduced on June the 12th, and tonight is the potential adoption and hearing. Now, I'm going to read the appropriate statement, which is that 00726 was introduced and passed on the first reading on June the 12th, 2007, and according to law, and it's now being taken upon for further consideration at a public hearing. An affidavit of the publication of the ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of June the 15th is submitted, and is noted that a copy of the ordinance was posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and the copies were available to the general public upon request. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
Absolutely. An ordinance amending Chapter 178 entitled Housing Code of the Code of the Township of Howell, New Jersey to amend the enforcement authority and the venue for hearing on violations of the code.
Okay, I'm going to open up the meeting to members of the general public for anyone who might have comments for or against the adoption of this ordinance. Anyone who would like to be heard, please come forward. Anyone who'd like to be heard. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing on this particular item. And I'm going to ask for a member of the council to please introduce a motion so we can debate the item.
May I make a motion that ordinance number 0-07-26 be finally passed and adopted, and that a notice of its passage and adoption be published in the July 20th, 2007 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
We have a motion and we need a second, please.
Second.
Ms. Hoover, since you have been kind enough to stay with us this long, perhaps you can amplify for the council the essence of this particular ordinance, if you wouldn't mind.
The reason I'm requesting the change.
If you could just, first, if you just introduce yourself and your position with the town, and then go from there.
Patricia Hoover, Chief Housing Officer.
Would you just pull the mic a little closer?
Patricia Hoover, Chief Housing Officer.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoover.
The reason I requested the change was that the venue should be within the municipal court as opposed to Construction Board of Appeals, which does hear new construction. And these ordinances are pertaining to resale, which fall under the Housing Code, which is a local ordinance.
Okay, any questions from members of the council?
Does this create
Go ahead, Mrs. Knoll.
duplication of, not duplication, but does this create the ability for different officials to have a say over the same issue? For example, if there is some kind of, I'm trying to think of an example where there might be a particular condition at a particular piece of property, and someone complains, and they complain to one department, and they're not satisfied with the way that department has resolved the issue. Does this enable them to then go to the other two? Because now we've got construction official, housing official, or code enforcement. Does this give people the right to pick and choose which forum they're gonna take it to, who they're gonna ask?
Ms. Hoover, can you answer that question?
Yeah, it's still going to be the same individual. I'm the licensed inspector for the department. At present time, the code reads construction official or whoever he chooses. So this just narrows it down for the public so they'll have a better understanding on who to call if they do have an issue with the housing code. Because right now we're getting a lot of problems with people calling up the construction department saying, I'm renting a house. So they don't know, the public does not know where to go. And this will narrow their search and know right to bring it into the housing construction or housing code enforcement office.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Mrs. Dalton?
The
Okay.
same enforcement agency is enforcing the code.
So I think to paraphrase maybe Mrs. Dalton's question a little differently, because I think I appreciate where she was going with it, was we're not creating now a different outlet for people to attempt to get this remediated. This is now the place you must go. There isn't, this clarifies where someone could go. It's where this new ordinance suggests.
Correct.
Okay.
Mayor,
Any other?
it mirrors the table of organization as it stands now.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the council? All right, hearing none, ask for a roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Mr. Walsh unfortunately had to leave for personal reasons, and so he's not in the chamber.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Hoover, for your patience.
Thank
All right,
you,
I'm
Patty.
going to ask the council to move to 882. This is 07023. Accordingly, this particular ordinance was introduced and passed on a first reading on 6/12/07 and published according to law. It's now being taken upon further consideration at a public hearing. An affidavit of the publication of the ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of June 15th, '07 is submitted, and it is noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and the copies are available to the general public upon request. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title of this ordinance?
An ordinance amending Article 10 entitled Zones of Chapter 188 entitled Land Use of the Code of the Township of Howell, New Jersey, to create a new Section 188-86.1 and new zoning district entitled Residential Adult Community,
Hold on.
including the
Go ahead.
zoning standards for
Is that the right
same.
one?
882?
Oh, okay, I wasn't free. All right. I apologize.
That's okay. Okay, at this time, I'm going to open the meeting to members of the public for a hearing for remarks or comments for or against the adoption of this ordinance. Anyone who would like to be recognized, please come forward. Anyone who would like to be recognized. Let the record reflect no one is asked to be acknowledged. I'm going to close the public hearing on this ordinance. I'd ask the member of the council to please proceed.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to motion that ordinance number 0-07-23 be finally passed and adopted, and the notice of its passage and adoption be published in the 7/20/07 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
Okay, we have a motion. We need a second.
Second, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or remarks from the council? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. 883, this is 00725, and accordingly, let it be noted that 00725, introduced and passed on first reading on 6/12/07 and published according to law, is now being taken upon for further consideration at a public hearing. Affidavit of the publication of the ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of 6/15/07 is submitted, and it is noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and the copies were available to the general public upon request. Ms. Wallman, would you please read the title of this ordinance?
An ordinance amending Section 2-27 entitled Deputy Clerk of Chapter 2 entitled Administration of Government of the Code of the Township of Howell, New Jersey, to revise and amend the appointment of the position of Deputy Clerk.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to open up the meeting to members of the general public who might like to make comments for or against final adoption of this ordinance. Anyone who'd like to be heard, please come forward. Anyone who'd like to be heard? Let the record reflect that no one is asked to be acknowledged on this particular issue. I'm going to close the public hearing. Ask the member of the council to introduce a motion.
May I make a motion that ordinance number 0-07-25 be finally passed and adopted, and that notice of its passage and adoption be published in the July 20th, 2007 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
Okay, we have a motion, and now we need a second, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or remarks from the council? Mr. Chuneski.
Mayor, as I can participate in discussion, I just want to point out, and I meant to do it on the last ordinance, that the staff is really to be commended, and all of us involved in making sure that our administrative codes stay current and up to date, and that, you know, coming out of the departments are taking initiatives to make sure that that's the case.
Terrific. Okay. Hearing no other comments or remarks, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. We've already commented and heard 8A4, so that item has been acted upon. 8A5 is 00727. And accordingly, let it be noted that was introduced and passed on a first reading on 6/12/07 and published according to law. It's now being taken upon for further consideration at a public hearing. An affidavit of the publication of the ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of 6/15/07 is hereby submitted. Noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies are made available to the general public upon request. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
An ordinance setting forth and adopting a salary range schedule for the salaries for certain officers and employees of the Township of Howell.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to open up the meeting to members of the general public for a hearing, accepting comments for or against final adoption of this particular ordinance. Anyone who'd like to be heard, please come forward. Anyone who'd like to be heard on this particular ordinance? Let the record reflect that no one is asked to be acknowledged. I'm going to close the public hearing. Ask a member of the council to introduce the motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we table this. I know that the deputy mayor had indicated that he wanted to consult with the Labor Council about this, and unfortunately he had to leave.
Sure.
So I would ask that we table this.
Okay, from a technical perspective, could we reopen the public hearing, Mr. Bongiovanni, and merely carry this? Or is that not the appropriate, or should we literally table it which might require it to be re-advertised. We opened it, we closed it. I guess we could reopen, could we not? So can we, from a technical perspective, reopen and carry? Okay. I'm going to reopen the public hearing on 8A5 with the understanding that there could be additional comments from a member of the council who's not here, and as such, those comments might be reflected upon by members of the public who might like to introduce additional remarks. So I'd ask we reopen the public hearing on this particular issue, and then a member of the council make a motion to carry this until which date, Ms. Woolman?
August 21st.
And ask a member of the council to carry this until August 21st.
Mayor, if I may then.
Please.
There is an amendment that would have to be made to this. It's on for introduction. If perhaps then you would simply let it lapse and a new one would be introduced.
Okay.
Because we need to amend it with and we can just skip over the introduction, if that's going to be the case.
So from a parliamentary perspective, could we not then close the public portion and just vote no? Because there's going to be something completely new that's going to be introduced?
That's what I'm hearing from Mr. If you just give us just a
Go,
second.
take your time.
Okay, Mayor, please strike that then. I apologize for interrupting you. If you can, we do need to introduce that second ordinance this evening.
Okay.
I'm sorry, please proceed.
So we should carry this?
Yes.
As suggested. Okay.
Yes.
I'd ask a member of the council to please introduce a motion to carry the public hearing until August 21st, 2007.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion. We have a motion and a second. Any remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton? Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, that was 8A5. We now have a variety of items that need to be introduced, beginning with 9A1. This is vacation of Lorelei Drive in Lorelei Woods. I'd ask a member of the council to please proceed.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-28 on first reading by title and to order that same be published in full in the 7/2007 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on August 21st, 2007 at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion. We need a second.
Second.
We do have a second. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the ordinance by title?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, vacating all the right, title, and interest in and to a portion of Lorelei Drive in the Marble Chase LLC development of Lorelei Woods.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. 9A2. I ask member of the council to please proceed.
May I make a motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-29 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the July 20th, 2007 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on August 21st, 2007 at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion. We need a second.
Second.
Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, making the provisions of Subtitle 1 of Title 39 with various traffic regulations applicable to the Cedar Glen at Howell Complex and regulating the use of said roadways, streets, driveways, and parking lots by motor vehicles.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. 9A3. Member of the council, please proceed.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to introduce ordinance number 0-07-31 on first reading by title and to order that same be published in full in the 7/20/2007 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on August 21st, 2007 at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion. We need a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title?
An ordinance amending and renaming the street located in the Township of Howell from Maypink Lane to Buttercup Lane.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. 9A4. Fingerprinting of juveniles. member of the council?
Motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-32 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the 7/2007 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on August 21st, 2007, at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time, again in the municipal building.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second, Mayor.
Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title?
An ordinance amending Section 223-6 of Chapter 223 entitled Peddling and Soliciting of the Code of the Township of Howell, New Jersey, to create an exception to the fingerprinting requirement for individuals under the age of 18 years old.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. 9A5, member of the council, please introduce.
Mayor, I make a motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-33 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the July 20th, 2007 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on August 21st, 2007, at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 188 Land Use to amend the HD3 zoning districts and to provide for development standards of 100% affordable housing, age-restricted developments.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. 9A6, member of the council, please proceed.
Motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-34 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the 7/2007 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on August 21st, 2007, at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second, Mayor.
Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, supplementing and amending Chapter 139, Article 4 of the Code of Howell Township entitled Miscellaneous Fees.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Just want to call the council's attention to Section 10 of our agenda. Unfortunately, with respect to the beer keg tracking ordinance, as memory serves, we were sort of deadlocked on this particular issue from a policy perspective, and absent the chamber is both the Deputy Mayor and Mrs. Showmaker, so I don't believe we're in a position to further act on this. I think secondarily, in deference to Mr. Walsh and Mrs. Showmaker, absent the full council, it might be inappropriate to comment or to entertain at this hour the request from the Economic Development Committee to hire a consultant at this point in time, and that we may want to include both of those council members for that discussion.
Mayor, if I could, I saw the discussion on the beer keg tracking ordinance at the June 12th meeting. I was not here, I was at a play that my daughter was in, and I believe it was 2-2.
That's right.
I believe the two members who are not here now were 1-1.
That is correct.
So if you're so inclined, I am absolutely in favor of introducing this ordinance. And I believe that would have broken the deadlock.
Well, there you go.
So.
Okay, well, that being the case, then it would appear that we have approval to have an ordinance crafted for the council's consideration and an introduction. So thank you, Mr. Howell. And are we in agreement with respect to 10-1, that absent Mr. Walsh and Mrs. Showmaker, we're really, it would be inappropriate to have a
Correct.
dialogue on this? Okay.
Yeah.
So Mr. Chinyetsky or Mrs. Woolman, if you would see to it that this is carried to the next meeting, at which time we can entertain it at that time. Mr. Chinyetsky, is there any other information or action for us this evening, sir?
No, sir.
Mayor?
I'm sorry?
Excuse me.
Oh.
You did not do 9A7.
We did not do 9A7.
That was the add-on ordinance.
I apologize.
Oh.
Okay. And this is an introduction.
Correct.
Yes.
I apologize. Thank you. Let me just call up my material.
Should we
Okay.
just table that with the other one?
All right, 9A7, I would ask a member of the council to proceed. This is amending the 2007 salary ordinance.
Motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-35 on first reading by title and to orders that same be published in full in the 7/2007 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on August 21st, 2007 at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
Okay, we have a motion, we need a second.
No.
It's just for introduction.
No, Mayor, I'd like to hope to see if we could table this for the same reason that we're tabling the other one. To let the Labor Council take a look at it, and I know that the Deputy Mayor did want to take a look at these, and unfortunately, he's not here.
All right, so what we could do is we can get the second. Well, actually,
Mayor, I just
Go right ahead.
want to remind the council that this is for introduction only,
mhm.
and with the meeting schedule, you were going to be delaying, like, for example, the computer technician, it was a budget-approved person for MIS department, and that title needs to be added to the salary ordinance. Now, we need to remember that this is only introduction.
So let me ask this from a technical perspective. If we introduce it tonight, we would have an opportunity, if you will, to allow the appropriate professionals to take a look in between, and at the time in which there's a public hearing, we could entertain comments, and if they were substantive enough that we wanted to make a change, we may have to table and re-advertise. Is that accurate, Mr. Bongiovanni?
Yes.
Does that satisfy your concern, Mr. Howell?
Considering the fact we don't have another meeting until August 21st, it might be, you know. even-
That's the concern.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, what I think was what the solicitor and the deputy manager indicated is that because there is so much, we don't have another meeting until the 21st.
Right.
That if we delay it and don't act on it until then and introduce it, we may be delaying the ability to create salaries, if you will, for some of the new positions that were added as a function of the adoption of the budget. And I guess in support of Mr. Howell's concern, will we have an appropriate amount of time to have other professionals examine this between now and the 21st, the pleasure of the council, to address any of the concerns that the deputy mayor may have that Mr. Howell has commented on? So, is that a yes? Will people be able to look at it and address
Right,
Mr.
I guess what I'm getting at is if by introducing this tonight, this can't be acted on tomorrow and we fund
No.
these.
You're introducing tonight, you still need to have public hearing on the ordinance.
Okay.
Right, and then after that, it's not
It's
applicable for about
20
20
days.
days, even
Okay.
after
All
it's
right,
adopted.
all right, in that case, I'll second, man.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title?
An ordinance to amend an ordinance entitled an ordinance fixing and salary and compensation of certain offices, positions, and employees in the Township of Howell, County of Monmouth, New Jersey, for the year 2007, and thereafter known by its short name as Howell Township Salary Ordinance.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes.
Mayor.
All right. No other business after that, Mr.
Well,
Chancellor?
there is, in light of the salary and wage ordinance issue, I guess the statement was that the deputy mayor expressed an interest in speaking with the labor attorney.
Okay.
And obviously, no council member is authorized to expend resources through professionals. So I think what would be in order here is a motion from the governing body to ask the labor attorney to review this ordinance and comment on it, and perhaps, authorize the deputy mayor to meet with or speak
Sir?
with the labor attorney.
Is someone will make that in the form of a motion?
So moved, Mayor.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments? Hearing none, roll call.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, we have our public, well, okay. There's an issue of whether or not there's going to be a meeting on the 14th, and Ms. Wallman will offline individually poll the council. In the event that that meeting does not take place, our next regularly scheduled workshop and regular meeting will be August 21st, executive session at 6:30, regular session at 7:30. Mr. Cherniatsky, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Same
You'll
here,
be
Mayor.
missed.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mayor.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Good evening.
Good morning.